got that number in that I was talking about before? Oh, thereabouts, yeah. We'll see what that works out to be. All right, as soon as you're ready. All right. Okay, welcome, councillors, and those on Zoom. I think we've got Jonathan and Pania, potentially.
Pania will be joining us as soon as she's available.
Shortly. Yep. Okay, thank you. So we have no apologies. Declarations of interest. Steve, yes?
Yeah, I might need some help on this, but I just wanted to declare an interest. Active Southland is my employer, and they are stationed in the velodrome.
Yep.
State of Southland's a big part of
Yep.
my day-to-day.
Yep. Don't see that as a conflict. Good that you declare. I know you about yours, Tom, being on the chair of the trust, involved at the
So I
stadium.
should state it anyway. So as
You should.
chairman of the Stadium Trust,
Yep.
I want to speak and vote on that issue when it comes.
Well, my view on that is that for me it's okay to talk to it because you have some knowledge that the rest of us may not be privy to, but maybe not vote on the issue. Yep, thank you. Any other declarations of interest? No? All right, somebody can move that. So we don't need to move that. Okay, so we've got two parts to this. One is the minutes of the hearings of the annual plan that were held on the 29th and 30th of April. That doesn't need to be moved or seconded. It's just for your information. It's an information share, just to reflect. But we do have the annual plan deliberations, which Patricia and Rhiannon and Jamie over the back is going to work us through. At this stage, it's quite complicated to work it through because every time we make a decision, the potential rate increase moves. So what I'm suggesting we do is as we get to each one of them, we'll have a bit of a straw poll, and Michael here will keep track of where people's thinking is. And so when we come to the final vote at the end, you can decide whether we vote individually or collectively on all the options that are in front of us. But it just means that it cuts away the ones where there is commonality, and then we focus on the ones where there may be some debate. And Jamie will give us advice as we go along about where the potential movement is. So what staff or management have brought back to the table is a starting point of 6.55%, which is significantly down from the previous 9.47. But that will be impacted by the decisions that we make today. From my perspective, it's always a balance between maintaining services and trying to keep rates low, especially when we have high cost of living periods. It's no secret that I advocated for 3.9 and did a lot of publicity around that, and it was disappointing in some ways that we got very little feedback in our consultation process on that issue. So that gives me a feeling that, or a view that a majority of our community are leaning towards trying to maintain what we've got, not necessarily build too much new, but to maintain what we've got and to be careful about what we cut away. And on the national picture, I've sent each of you a report in the last couple of days about where we will fit in the national scene. So in the overall scheme of 67 councils, what we're proposing or where we're likely to land today will put us in the bottom 20% of rate increases for the coming year in the country. Being mindful that some of the people that are below us are really not comparable with us because they're very, very small councils. And when you look at the provincial cities, which is not the big metros, but the ones of similar size to us, the Nelsons, the Timaroos and what have you, I think there are 3 lower than us, but there's about 15 above us in the provincial things. So just as an information share, that might help give some solace to where we land at the end of the day. So if we want to work our way through this, I'll just progressively go through bit by bit. And the easiest way is to come on to each one of the cost factors, which is on the consultation issues.
What page are you on?
I'm working off a hard copy because it makes it a little bit easier for me to manage. So the first issue on there is there, number 8, is the issue of the Walking Place toilets. And just before I let people...
It might be useful for councillors and those watching to understand how that number has dropped from 9 to 6. Could we get a context of that from
Sure.
Patricia? Thanks.
Patricia. A nice, easy question to start with.
Your reference to 9 to 6, sorry, councillor, I'm just slightly
How we
lost.
got to that lower potential percentage increase?
So right at the top, so how we've got to that is we've looked at some different options, and each of those options are put in those papers. So to get down to that 6.55 combined, it means taking the most savings in each of the options as we go through. So that's the lowest that could get based on the options that we've been provided. We have also, on some of the matters that were important during consultation, we have given a halfway house option. So where there's a cut, or not cut, and a half cut, so to speak. So we've given those as well to give some flexibility to councillors to make some choices in relation to certain items. There are, and the last bit which comes through, there's some regulatory changes that have come through since the time when we finished the numbers for consultation. So it is now being confirmed that we no longer will need an LTP for the next year. So we had factored in an amended LTP which has an audit cost. So that comes out, which is a significant change to the water side, as well as we have looked again at our interest rates, both borrowing and deposit, and made some minor changes there. They balance out when we take in a reforecast of our asset loan that we have to ICL. They are paying that loan back much faster than we had expected, which then changes our interest revenue profile. So that has had to be factored in as well. They pretty much balance out, so have no impact on rates, but it's important to show that we've gone through and looked at all those line items.
Okay with that, Darren? Yep, thank you, Rangi.
My question is around the drop, or proposed drop, from 20% to 14% for Three Waters. Now, obviously, as mentioned in the infrastructure meeting, the importance of ring fencing, the proposed option we've gone for. Now, this sudden change of heart with Three Waters has me a bit worried, because obviously the DIA and even Prime Minister Luxton said at the local government conference that we've got to drop the fantasies and do the basics, and he was referring to Three Waters. So we're not scrimping, cutting, and Three Waters that the DIA will be looking at us?
So through you, Chair, the Three Waters reduction is a combination of multiple items. We've had a look at depreciation, both the amount that we would fund as well as what a depreciation charge will be for next year, given that we won't have as many new assets as what we had originally forecast. So there's been some delays on some projects that we thought would have been capitalised for 1 July and be started to be depreciated. That is one aspect, but it's the depreciation. So to get it to its lowest amount takes the rates funding of depreciation for sewage and stormwater down to 80%. So we were going to take it, when we went out to consultation, to the middle ground of 90%. This is now proposed to get it to its lowest would be a decision to take rates funding of depreciation down to 80% for those two lines. Water was at 100%, and we've kept water at 100%.
And this is, I just have to ask, this is not going to catch up with us later, as in some other councils around New Zealand have obviously maybe depreciated at lower rates?
There is, as we had said when we went out to consultation, the expectation is from the water regulators and Commerce Commission will be expected to be fully funding depreciation, but they are still looking at what that depreciation charge may be. It may be calculated in a different manner than what we do for accounting.
Ria?
Thank you, Patricia, for the explanation. Does that given all that you've just said to us and the decisions that we make this afternoon, we're still looking at rates smoothening
Yes.
over the next 3 years.
Yes, we still need to rate smooth. We will still have an unbalanced budget. By not fully funding depreciation, we will still be sitting with an unbalanced budget. So remind councillors that really with an unbalanced budget, we are borrowing to pay for operating expenses.
Erin?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to add a little piece on to what Patricia was clarifying around depreciation in the Three Waters space. You know, she's absolutely right in terms of all of the indications that were coming out of central government were around you will need to essentially pay for the portion of the cost of the service as you use it. You won't be able to push those costs out, and that was leaning towards the moving towards us needing to 100% fund depreciation each year. The reason that it was put into the annual plan to try to increase those numbers was so that we didn't have, when we were required to do the full ring fencing in 2028, we didn't have a sudden huge jump in those fees and charges for what the community would then have to do. So we were looking to try to stage that so that it wasn't as severe when we moved to that depreciation model. I think the reason that we are more comfortable now to not move in that manner is because the Commerce Commission are indicating that they might completely change the framework in which we manage depreciation for Three Waters. And so we could make that move at the moment, but it may actually not be the correct model that we're attempting to now try to reconcile. So as a result, we've said, you know, we can probably reduce those movements, but we do need to be aware that depending on where depreciation lands, there may be a catch-up and a requirement to, you know, increase that depreciation amount quite severely later on down the track, but we simply don't know at this stage. And another wonder of the uncertainty of the model we're currently in.
So in a lay term for some of us, many organisations depreciate their vehicles and new vehicles over a 4-year period. So they pay a proportionate amount each year over 4 years. But most organisations don't actually replace the cars in 4 years because modern cars go 6, 7, 8, 9 years before they need to be replaced. And so the benefit of that sometimes is that you can spread that depreciation without doing any major damage, given that I think that we've put a huge amount of effort already into upgrading Branksholme and the major pipes that come into the city. She's not nodding, but never mind. Oh, Leslie.
Thank you. I had originally indicated to talk about the item 8.
Okay,
And I still want to talk about
You're
that,
right.
but I do now have a
Excellent.
question about the depreciation issue.
Yep.
So, looking at our proposed move on depreciation, are we now, is the recommendation now that we stay with the depreciation rates as they are, or are you recommending for going to 85 at least?
I think
so
that
are you recommending the medium move now?
that decision comes later in this
that-
document.
We aren't recommending, we're providing options.
Yeah.
Of both 80, 85 and 90% funding. They come with risks of not funding, as I've alluded to previously. They do come with the risks of an unbalanced budget and all those other aspects, which is in the report as well.
Aware of that. So the original option that we went to consultation on was to move to 90.
Yes.
80 is where we are at the moment, except for water, which is 100 anyway. So any of those three options, we're weighing up the risk. If we stay at 100, 80, 80, the risk is 2 years' time is a very big move. If we go to 85, we're cushioning. If we go to 90, pain is more intense now.
Potentially, correct. Because we don't know what that depreciation model is going to look like.
We don't know what the model's looking like. Thank you.
Tom.
Yeah, I'd just comment on depreciation. I think it's important to look at what actually physically is intended to be done in an engineering sense rather than just the accounting adjustment. So what we're proposing actually is an increase in capital spend. It's not a decrease. You know, through, when I say proposing, I mean to get to the 6.55 actually includes an increase in capital spend from 75 million to 93 million. And it includes bringing the rising main pipe duplication project forward. I would also point out the essential services benchmark, which is again a physical measure of how much we are actually spending. Again, in this version, the 6.55 version, we're actually proposing to increase the essential services benchmark from 94 to 96%. Now, both of those things taken together tell me actually the physical work is still getting done. In fact, we're probably doing more. It's the accounting adjustment in terms of what we assume for depreciation, which has changed.
Sure.
And as an engineer myself, I've got to be honest and say I've never cared much about that. What matters is what you physically do in the ground, and we're proposing to do more, not less.
Yep. Rangi?
Sorry, the other question I forgot to ask was around the deferral of the Bluff wastewater. Now, obviously, if we'd voted for the wetlands one, we would be doing that now, but we chose another option, and obviously there's no rating, there's nothing in there rating for the Bluff wastewater.
I would have to check, councillor, but I do believe that's been moved out. It's been moved out into later years, so no.
Okay, so if we had gone for the option for the wetlands one, we would be rating it now?
If we were delivering it
Yeah.
for next year, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to consultation issues. Number 8, Leslie, you want to be first cab off on that one? It relates to the Wagner Place toilets. We got quite a... Oh, hands up.
Could we just
Yes.
make a correction before you begin the debate on recommendation 8? So just to note that in option C, which is the reduced schedule, those numbers just need to be corrected to a small amount because those calculations were based on being open 9 a.m. to 12 noon, 7 days a week. So just to correct that, and I have sent that through to Mr. Morris, those new numbers. It's only a minor difference, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see what you mean. Yep. So, just for an information share, this morning I had a meeting and Tom had a meeting with management, trying to get a handle on how come we've got costs up around about 200,000 for the current system. I think at least a quarter of those costs are what you'd loosely call overheads, doesn't include electricity, which is paid separately by us. So it's cleaning products and lots of other things as well. So it's reasonably realistic that we should be able to negotiate down to a much tighter opening time if we want, focus more on the ability for people to share and store, knowing that there are 3 sets of toilets within very close walking distance of the current Wagner Place, Monday to Friday being an option. But the contract doesn't expire, the current contract doesn't expire till the 31st of August. So we've got a couple of months of, and I did ask the question, could we possibly use a variation clause to bring it down earlier than that, but the effort required sort of overrides the benefits you get just for 2 months. So, Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So my question on this one is, the current opening hours are 84 hours per week.
Yep.
So this proposal C would reduce that to 21 hours per week and seems to be based on retaining the share facility rather than mentioning particularly the toileting facility where we know that there are other toilets in close vicinity, or the storage facility. So my question is, do we have up-to-date reported figures on the usage of that facility for the showering, toileting and the storage facility? Do we have the actual figures? Because when we first discussed this proposal, the figures presented were very ambiguous and hard to make anything of, and we did say at the time, could we have more up-to-date statistics on usage? Do we have those?
So, through you, Chair, I have got some up-to-date figures. There are still concerns about the data accuracy of those figures. We are looking, based on those, the shower hire usage is looking to be between 21 to 55 uses a month. So year to date, so this is from 1 July 24 to the end of March, is 275 uses of the showers and 57 uses of the lockers, 1,191 public inquiries, 1,214 uses of the restroom family room, and 14,072 uses of the toilets. So that is the information which the contractors provided. There are some concerns about the integrity of that data, but that's the information, the best information that we've got to date.
So the sharing use is less than 20 a week? Yes, less than 20 a week. So the highest month was February at 55 uses.
A week or a month?
A month.
So my concern then, Mr Mayor, would be on the usage we're now having reported, that if option C was adopted, that would be an extremely expensive way of operating showers. In fact, on a quick head calculation, that might come somewhere around $100 per shower.
Well, if we had
unrealistic.
20 a month, if that was the figure, conservatively, that's
20
five.
a month would make it worse. 20 a week would work out at about.
Did you say 20 a week or 20 a month?
20 a month.
20 a month.
20 a month would
So
make
that's,
that
well,
exceptionally expensive.
my quick calculation is about
showers.
$250 a shower.
That would make the realism of looking into the shower beside the bike sheds at Invercargill Central as something that we could open up for that use, an extremely feasible proposition, or indeed the hire of an automatic share of the type of automatic toilet we already had at probably $500 a month, then becomes a far more realistic proposition. But I could not support a facility open for those limited times, which would cut severely into the use for toileting facilities, and we know that there are other close toileting facilities, and would have such a high cost per shower usage. That would not sit comfortably with me at all.
Sure.
I certainly believe we should have a sharing facility available for our homeless, whom we are told are using the share facility, but for the possibility that we could do that with the shower available at Invercargill Central, which we understand is not currently used, which we could negotiate for the cleaning costs to be available, and is in a different part of the complex from the toilets in Invercargill Central. Therefore is private as far as the sharing facility goes. That just to me becomes a realistic option that we would be foolish not to explore.
I guess the issue we'll face is we need to make a decision today. We can't wait till the contract lapses, I guess, in some ways, because part of the development of Walkden Place at the moment includes that area. If we're not going to use it and we're going to dismantle it, we'll have to signal that to Jeff fairly quickly. I'm picking, so that's a good point you raised. Trish.
2 or 3 points. First of all, I looked very closely at the feedback through the submissions, and the feedback did not come from who I think are the people affected by it. So we need to remember that when we're making decisions. I agree with Councillor Soper. I think we cannot possibly afford to have a shower there for that number of usage. I wondered whether it would be possible to put a shower near the library library, and where the library toilets are, is that an option? But I believe, as I originally said, that we should close the Wapna Place toilets as long as there's provision for showering for the homeless,
Yep,
or for people who use that.
yep, okay, Barry?
Yeah, I'm thinking more of the vulnerable people. Councillor Soper brought it up. It worries me that these vulnerable people are going to be in our mall. The idea of Trish's to have that the share at the library sounds a very good one to me. But yeah, it would worry me with our new complex.
So, yeah, I'll
That's
just,
my opinion, because I voted to
yeah,
keep the toilets anyway.
before I bring others into the discussion, Leslie, where's the share in the ICL?
Just as a point of clarification, the shower at ICL is beside the bike storage area,
Yeah,
Okay.
in the
which
bike
is,
storage area.
if you think of ICL's layout, the
Yeah.
bike storage area is, correct me Steve, you probably know it better than me,
Close to
is
the,
beside the off-ramp.
Oh,
Yes,
yeah.
yeah, it's completely separate from the
Totally
showering
separate.
facility.
Okay,
People who used that chair, if we opened it and paid the cleaning costs, would not be entering the mall
Okay.
as such. So
Okay.
they would be accessing a separate showering facility, off D Street.
Tay Street.
Off, sorry, off
Just
Tay
Tay
Street.
Street.
Off Tay
Yep.
Street.
okay, got that, Alex?
Thank you. Yeah, look, I support everything that's been said prior, but I just wondered as well as part of this whole process, it's clear that we're going to have to go away and do some due diligence on what it's going to look like, which shower is most appropriate, where, you know, what the accessibility of the said shower and the bike shed would look like. But I also wondered if there was an opportunity of getting our more vulnerable people more involved in the community or accessing community facilities that might help for quality of life. Like had a discussion with some other councillors previously around potentially us developing a shower concession card for the likes of the use of Splash Palace, so that they could, you know, we could still keep the $3.50 charge that they currently get charged, but they could use other facilities that we already provide and already have the infrastructure for. Or working with organisations that are in the CBD, such as over the road here at YMCA, where they provide a lot of other service alongside, you know, a showering type service, and already have those facilities. So my request was more around, more than happy to make the call on it today, but I would like us to explore what those further options would look like.
Yep. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, I was quite clear, I guess, when we originally looked at this, that I was really open to closing Wapna Place, given that we had another alternative. I think through the submission process, it was made more clear to me that I needed more understanding around who was using, particularly the showers, right? I believe we have toilet access, and that's covered, but the shower access for those in our community that are most vulnerable, I wouldn't be prepared to close the toilets without a viable option there, and maybe there wasn't enough direction given to the staff. I guess I know we need to make a decision today, but I would move today towards a 9 till 12 option, 5 days a week, but I still with that would like to see those other opportunities really pursued. I think the ICL shower option, you know, in my opinion, potentially is viable and should really be looked at within the bike shed. It sits within the heart of our city. It's externally accessible. It makes a lot of sense. So I wouldn't want to make a decision around 9 to 12 today without that being kind of a caveat that you know.
I guess we will face the decision, the questions from the community. If we know there's 20 a month, or even if there's 30 a month, they will say, why are you providing shower facilities at 150, 200, 250 per shower?
Yes.
Yeah. You could go and get a week in a motel for that price.
Yeah.
I mean, and I know that Tom and Leslie have approached the issue of homeless people before, or rough sleepers, and trying to get a handle on how many there are in a city is just, it's a bit of a throw a stone into a pond and see where it lands sometimes. We don't know for sure. You get figures from 30 to 80 depending on who you talk to. So yeah, that's okay. Darren. Yep.
It's an uncomfortable discussion around
Gotcha,
Waka
Pania.
Place, but we've known that it's been coming, and I think looking for halfway options is kind of dropping out a little bit. The suggestion of can we put showers in at the library, well, first of all, we'd have to go and assess whether or not that can be done. There's a lot of plumbing that goes into that. There'll be consultants. I don't say that cheekily. I mean, there's a lot of thought and expense that would come with it. The numbers of usage, the fact that there is an alternative facility available kind of answer the showering issue in my mind. The other bit of feedback that we had from the community about the value of the Waka Place toilets was, as opposed to the automated Exeloos, they were a good option for those who have sensory issues, and I understand and respect that. But those sensory issues don't apply to the toilets that are available in Invercargill Central because they're not automated. So I think the options are covered elsewhere, and that closure, as uncomfortable as it is, bearing in mind it's right across the road and I've had to use it on occasion. I do actually have a bit of faith in the integrity of the numbers because I have watched them keeping note. Or maybe it's just me. But I think that actually uncomfortably closure ultimately is the option we should go with.
Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm also in support of what other members have actually said. One of the things I did want to touch on was, and Darren lightly touched on this as well, the automated toilets that some of our presenters were concerned about. And with the Councillor Cricket saying about the concession tickets to use infrastructure we've already got, we talked about rough sleepers. I think in the public arena there's somewhere around the figure of 173. But rough sleep is actually defined whether they're on your couch or somebody else's. They're not always outside, and that's quite widely known in the community. So what I thought, and we didn't consult on this either, but when Councillor Craig talked about diligence, and we do that, I'm ready to make a decision today. One of those things would be to put an automated shower in at Queen's Park, where we've got toilets there as well. I mean, there's options that we've got. Obviously, we didn't consult for that, but you know, if we're going to look at where else we can put these showers, there are some options that we do have.
Pania. You there, Pania? Hello? You there, Pania? She can't hear me. Oh. I can't hear you, Pania.
You're on mute.
Pania, you're on
You're
mute.
muted.
There we go.
Yep.
Kia ora. Yeah, the shower and the toilet in Waka Place is an interesting discussion. However, I mean, what I got from the hearing is that there was a very much support around it. Looking at alternatives like showers, and I think, you know, when Councillor Craig, I think even though the places to explore, the reality is that a lot of those rough sleepers or homeless people more likely will not be welcomed in a lot of places like the CBD and things like that. So the reality is those are things that have to be taken into consideration.
Okay. Tom.
I'll probably speak to support what Steve said. I'm probably going to say what Steve did. I mean, in my view, it's essential that there's somewhere for rough sleepers to shower. Is it the city's job to provide that? Well, nobody else is. So if we don't, then there simply won't be a place. So I think that is necessary. I don't really know that we know enough about the alternatives. I understand the bike shed alternative, but we talked about that months ago, and we're no further forward with it. So what I heard Steve say, I think, was that the option that is on the table is that we agree to fund the opening of Walkner Place for 5 days a week for 3 years. If we can find another way of using that money or less than that money to provide a better service, then there's nothing to prevent us doing that. But in terms of the decision we make today, which is what are we going to route for to provide that service, I think that's the option that we should choose.
So we could transition over a 12-month period.
And it may be we find it, maybe we don't find a better way, but maybe we would do.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. Rangi?
First a question, and then I've got a comment. The question is, are the toilets, are they self-cleaning, where they lock the doors and nuke the place, or are they manually done by people, cleaned?
Locked in place.
Yeah. Manually.
Okay. Overseas, they have an automated service.
Yep.
Okay. Never mind. I really can't believe the option C, where you have it Monday to Friday. The human body does not suddenly decide that it's not going to do ablutions in the weekend. So I just can't see the sense in why, if you're going to do a restricted hours one, I would support that 9 till 12, but 7 days a week. Sorry, it doesn't make any sense. Our city is a 7-day-a-week city now. You look at it, it's happening all the time. Go uptown Sunday, could be any day of the week. So I don't know why Monday to Friday is there. So with those three options, the only one I can vote for is B. I would vote for C if it was all week, Monday to Sunday, but it's not, so yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, I'm getting round. Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Clark. I'm in support of option C. I think what that is really a transition approach. It acknowledges the need that's in our community. I think that's really important. And, you know, as Patricia shared the data, we need to continue to monitor this and get some understandings around, you know, whether we maintain it, whether we open it and extend it to 7 days a week, or we move the facilities, you know, somewhere completely different. So I'm supportive of C. I think we still provide the service on a reduced capacity, and it provides vulnerable people. So that's my view.
So just as a response, Rangi, to your suggestion, I've worked in social services for many decades. The people that I've come across that are living rough tend not to shower every single day. They're quite reactive, and they'll adjust to whatever we put in front of them, I think. We won't need to have a shower there. Unlikely that a person that's rough sleeping will go out and shower every single day. But whatever, hands up later on that. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, I have to say that now we're informed that the current contract is going until August.
Yep.
There is ample time to arrange the opening of the shower that already exists in ICL between now and August as the replacement. To me, option C would just be ridiculous. As I said, on the current figures, we would be reducing the opening hours of Walkner Place from 84 current hours per week to 15 hours if you're talking about Monday to Friday, or 21 hours if you're talking about Monday to Sunday, which seems more sensible. That's a huge reduction in hours, but not, when you read the financial figures, a huge reduction in the cost for a year. When we have the simple alternative of opening an existing facility in ICL with a private entrance, it just seems to me that there is no logic in voting for option C. That I declare, sadly, I would be voting for option A with the proviso that this council undertook to open the alternative showering facility that we already part own and which exists unused, with a separate entrance in ICL between now and August, with good signage directing people to that alternative. That alternative does not mean that we are asking our homeless people to enter the ICL building and walk through the entire mall. We are saying that there is an available shower they can access, one shower, and I remind everybody Wapna Place has only one shower. There were lots of references and submissions to showers multiple. Wapna Place toilets have always only had one shower. We would be opening an equivalent shower in a very close walking distance, and we have several months in which to do it. So I declare I could not vote for option C. It would just, to me, be an irresponsible, large cost. I absolutely agree this council needs to provide that facility for homeless showering purposes, but we have the facility for the cleaning costs of opening that unused shower beside that bike storage facility.
I'll come back to you in a minute. Alex.
It's me.
It's you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Soper stole the words right out of my mouth. Knowing that the contract does continue on until August, I think does give us ample time to explore those other options. The one thing that I would like to ease the mind of anybody who's watching or currently uses the bike shed facility at the moment, when we walked past there were maybe 2 or 3 poking our head in. Steve and I took a wee jaunt around town to sort of check out the local facilities. I think there was about 2 or 3 bikes hanging up in there at the time. They currently use a door card system where you must be issued, I assume from ICL, a door card so that you can access the bike shed. It would be a simple retrofit to ensure that the person that accesses it for their bike facilities has the ability to have that separate, and then the shower facility that's also to the left is separate. So you can you'd be able to be rest assured that you can still use the bike storage facility for the bike storage facility as it was intended, but you would also be able to use it as the shower was intended. So I'm confident that if we give it the time, which we clearly have on our hands, and we are really clear with those people who need to access the facility, we've still got the months in which to communicate that with those people that are currently accessing it, that this new facility is coming. Then, I think, like Councillor Soper, the only real option for us to, in my opinion, to explore is option A. Thank you.
Ria.
I don't have anything else to contribute because Councillor Soper and Cracker aired my thoughts precisely. Only just one of the things in the data numbers, sorry, for Patricia, is that you said that the collection of data was that the toilets were used 1,472 times?
That's year to date, yes.
Okay.
No, 14,072.
Okay, 14,072. And that's for the year to now?
Yeah, from till March, should I say, sorry.
Okay, to March. So,
Tom.
That's great. No, it's all right.
Oh, sorry,
Look, I think, sorry,
No.
Ria, I thought you were finished.
No, I didn't know if I had, no, you're fine. I didn't know if I had the number right. I just want to quickly ask that.
Okay.
So, got my answer.
So you're done?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Tom.
So I think there's probably common agreement, Chair, that the best solution might be to use the shares behind the bike shed, as it were. The only problem I have with option A is that it implies that we do not rate for anything. So I'm assuming that the ICL will expect some fee for using those shares. They'll have to be cleaned and so forth, so there'll be costs involved in it. So I don't want to find us agreeing to vote for option A on the basis of the shares behind the bike shed. If we find that then we don't have any, we have not rated anything to it. So I guess the reason that I supported option C, and it might be that there's an amendment made to option A, but the reason I'm going to support option C is because it does provide some money, whether that money goes towards the bike shed or whether that money goes towards walking a place, I think, remains to be, I guess, explored over the next few months, but at least there is some money raised to do something. If we get to August and we find that the toilets have to be closed, and there's nothing in their place because we've got no money to put anything in their place, then I think we'll have failed to provide that protection for the homeless. So unless somebody's got a good way of modifying option A, I would still support option C.
Yep. Before I go to the others, just a reflection on that. You know our ownership in ICL. It's reasonable that they've got an extensive cleaning contract in there. So that's not for the individuals, but that's for the main building. It would not be a huge cost, I don't think, to extend whoever's got the contract by a small amount to clean the showers out at the end of the evening or whenever the building's closed. I would have thought, but anyway. Alan.
I'm okay. I think I'm opting towards option A myself.
Yep.
I think it's, although I see a need for a public toilet store to be there, because if, on the numbers that they're quoting, that's 40 people using the toilets every day, every 24 hours. I presume that some of those times that they use them are probably at night, I guess in the evenings. So there's obviously still a need for a toilet there at some stage. But
Yeah,
so I think the share thing, are we also certain as to that the people using the shares are homeless people? Do we know that? Or are they travellers that don't have a share between accommodation? Do we know?
Through you, Chair, we don't have any data about demographic of the types of users that we've got.
So, I mean, we might be talking about homeless people, but it might not necessarily be homeless people, because remember, it's only 0.7 to, 1.4 people a day, so not a lot of people.
Okay,
Could
Trish.
be,
Oh, sorry.
Something to a tower or between accommodation, just to come off the bus or something. I don't know. So I'm opting for option A, I think.
Yep, thank you. Trish?
Could we modify option A to ensure that we have developed an option for showering in the city centre? I mean, I certainly am going for option A, but I would like to think that any new council would know our clear intentions.
Yep, okay. And lastly, Leslie.
I was going to suggest a modification
Thank
to
you.
option A, which would say close Wapna Place toilets on the proviso that by August 2025, the existing share facility at ICL is opened for public use.
Excellent.
And a suitable
And
alternative.
if it is felt, or in a suitable alternative, if necessary, if it is felt that we need some combined rate impacts effect in there, I would suggest that we put in no more than 0.04%. Although, as you have said, Mr Mayor, the cleaning contract, I am sure, can
It'd be extended.
be extended,
Yep.
but if there is a feeling that there needs to be some combined rates impact
Yep.
signal with that, then 0.04%
Yep.
or even 0.02%, if Patricia agrees with me.
I'm
Put
just
some
getting the
indication in.
percentages converted to numbers.
Is it 0.4.4?
No, 0.0.
0.04.
0.4,
Point. 0.4, yeah.
40,000, something like that.
What's that in dollar terms,
Well,
Jamie?
around 30,000, I think.
30,000.
Mayor Clark?
Yeah.
So, so everyone has that, that would be 29,000?
Sounds about right.
If we can get into ICL.
That's close, that's grand out.
So two issues. 0.4 would be too much at 30,000. I can tell you. I mean, I've had a cleaning franchise before. Cleaning toilets once a day times 5 days would not cost the provider, building owner $30,000. Nowhere near that.
Put 0.2 and then.
Yep. As an option.
Would we not have it accessible all week, though?
That's clean.
That would be the plan.
Yeah.
The last curveball for us, Patricia.
I think 30,000 could be on the light side, because we may have to make the capital changes to ICL. We would have to fund those changes to allow the bike shed changes, so that could be actually more than 30,000 to make those changes and get it operational. So it could be that we bring that back as an adjustment, or we use option C,
Yep.
with the flexibility
Yeah,
that
that's right.
allows us to get something, because we'd have to enter into negotiations and get it all tied up, can take a little bit longer than you may be envisaging.
Given our ownership, that shouldn't be too hard. Alex?
Oh, thank you. Patricia's just sort of said what I was saying. I was thinking we might be a wee bit on the light side, because
Yep.
there will need to be a refit of the security doors, etc. Like, that's at the very least, I would say, to get it operational, to separate the bikes and the usage, and of course negotiations with ICL, because although we do have a considerable stake in that project, it's not actually us in totality that gets to make these kinds of decisions, so we are at the end of the day sort of asking. I would really like to see us include, as part of the resolution, the exploration around that accessibility for the showers and our existing infrastructure in Splash Palace. So if we can include that in the wrap up, because like Patricia said, this negotiation takes, or the refit takes longer than the end of the August period for the current contract. We do, in the interim, need to be able to divert those people somewhere and make sure that they've got safe and accessible facilities. So Splash Palace is a really good viable current option for that. There's also the option that we may not just know that facilities like YMCA or some of the local gyms have showers only type facilities. We may just not be aware of those things. So I think that as part of this, that we need to include the exploration of those, so that they're not, so we don't get to August and actually go, oh no, we don't have anywhere for them to go. So that just to make sure that there's provision for both. Thank you.
Grant, no, sorry, Leslie then?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. So I think there's two issues, isn't there? One is, how do we provide sharing facilities in the CBD? And the second thing is, what's the rates impact? So I think it's dangerous to try and split it. So we either go with go to the back of the bike sheds, to use the Deputy Mayor's words, or but we have to take the rate of 0.13 combined to that option to allow us the flexibility to explore and make the capital investment and then do the operation. Now, that's not a target, but we have to allocate some cost to it, because there will be. So the alternative would be to change C to retain the toilets until an alternative option is investigated and a capital and operational cost is brought back to, could come back to infrastructure or could come back to community wellbeing, doesn't matter. And so that's fully costed out. So then we know we were moving to, and it would likely be a reduction in rates, but until that time, I think we can't say go with the other option, because we haven't costed it. Clear as mud.
Yeah, I guess the issue that sits in behind all this is if we leave it till August to make a decision, a final decision, we're going to upset the development of Wokna Place, which Jeff is doing at the moment.
I think we should.
He'll want that finished before then. He's got enough tiles, he's told me, which is paving stone tiles, to go right across, and including if Wokna Place is demolished, the toilets are demolished. But he needs to know one way or the other. It's either staying or it's not staying. And I just think, from what I'm hearing around the table, we should make the decision not to stay put there, but to go. But we need to explore a range of options, which is what Alex said maybe. But if nothing else, we can develop ICL, as long as we rate for it. I can't see us not being able to get there. I mean, we've got significant enough skin in the game in ICL to be able to force that along. Right, Leslie, and somebody else had their hand up. Yep. The very last speaker.
If I could have another attempt at moving an amendment to A.
Yep.
Which would read, close Wokna Place toilets on the proviso that a suitable showering facility is opened by 30 August at the existing facility at ICL and or other alternative venues to be explored, and in brackets, combined rates impact 0.2 0.08%. That gives us the time, that gives us the ability to open ICL's facility with the necessary modifications. It gives us a rate sum to do that, and it gives us the ability to explore the other suggestions from Councillor Crackett, which may in fact be good enough to be additional facilities.
All right. Right, that's the last of the discussions on this.
So
Oh, sorry, Peter.
I would move that as an amendment to A.
Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
We've had Wachner Place toilets there for a number of years now. People are getting used to the hours that they're open. I believe there's only one option, and that's option B. You must retain it. If a person goes there to the toilet, what happens? You got to go. But if it's locked up, what would they do?
Go to
An
the
alleyway,
Library.
and then they'll
Go
get
to the library.
prosecuted.
Go to ICL.
Yep.
Go to the library.
I don't think that a lot of people could hang on to go that far. So I reckon the only option is option B. Retain it the same hours that we've always had it.
Yep. So, I am just before I get a straw poll involved, I am mindful, Peter. Not listening.
I'll second Leslie's
Yep,
motion.
thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just want a quick show of hands so we know where we're at with all these things. So if I could just get an indication of those that support A with the modifications that Leslie put in, which they're going to type up. I can just get a show of hands on those that support A. Yep, that's the majority. Thank you very much. Righto, moving on now. We'll come back to that at the end. Moving on to number 9 now, which is we either agree or disagree with the proposed bus fares. Leslie?
I just want to say a congratulations to our staff who have continued to negotiate with NZTA and have therefore we've been able to look at a much more palatable outcome for all of our age groups, really, and it is considering the government's indication towards user pays, this is a very good outcome to be at this point in time. Having just used the public buses in Christchurch, I see that the fare is currently $4. And I think that we have probably come to a very good final proposal here that I'm much more comfortable with.
Yep. And certainly the feedback we got through consultation was very much focused on two things. One was the children, those under 13, and the other one was the issue of needing to consult with the bus drivers. If somebody's here from, Aaron's here, bus drivers about the routes. And I've had quite a bit of feedback about the idea of not going down one street, turning around and coming back down the same street. Go down and do a loop, come back round, gives you a wider coverage with your bus services. Grant?
Yep, thanks, Chair. The only other thing I'm concerned about, and this is based on feedback through the consultation process, is the cost for school, school, not children, young adults, that 13 to 18 bracket. So if you took a family with 3 kids, that's $12 a day, 5 days a week. That's 60, 70 bucks, $60. It's costing them, and so I think we actually should be looking to, maybe you introduce some policy around school uniforms so they become free as well.
Student pass.
Yeah, they have their student.
They get on a student pass, they get it free, do they? At 13 to 18.
Well, if they don't, they shouldn't. Maybe that's what you have, a student pass.
Yeah, because that was really strong feedback through the consultation process, the cost to families, and it's a really important piece. We want to encourage these kids to get to school. We don't want to put any barriers there, and so I just think we need to be thinking about that. I'm sure, I don't know staff will better work out what the impact of that is, but certainly something I'd be keen to look at.
Okay. Alan?
And also, I think that the children under 13 should be children accompanied by a parent. Because I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I know that you might get groups of young children just, knowing that they can ride around buses for free, ride around on buses, and if you have that happening, and there's misbehaviour, let's just say, that would deter other people from actually using the buses just for normal transport, or could do. So I would suggest that, generally speaking, they should be accompanied by an adult.
We're not aware of that being a problem. We're putting out a fire that doesn't exist.
Have we asked?
I'm pretty sure we'd hear.
It's illegal to have a child by themselves under the age of 14. So if they were riding around on buses by themselves, that would be another problem in its own.
They'd never get to school.
Yep.
They don't all go to school.
And that's
You're missing the
true.
point.
Yep.
That's true.
I'm just saying.
It's illegal.
Tom?
Chair, I propose I support the compromise that's described in option 9. I appreciate what Councillor Dermody's saying about the youth payment of $2, and if there's a family that's got a number of youth and all travelling at the same time, then that can mount up. But nothing's free. It's simply other people are paying for it. And the question is whether we rate to pay for, other people's bus fares. And personally, I don't think we should in that age range. I think what's proposed here is a fair compromise to what we saw before. It does involve some increase, 0.04%, if we accept that. But I think that's a fair compromise.
Erin?
Thank you, Chair. I would just note, particularly around those children's fees, I think the Councillor Soper made the statement about the negotiation work that was done by the team. I would just let Council know that NZTA are still very uncomfortable with that free fee. They have agreed to allowing it to remain this year, but we are on notice that they will be monitoring closely our total fare recovery, and that they may force us to take a harder stand on that in the future. So in terms of giving more, more favourable rates towards children, I think we are very unlikely to see that happen.
Okay. All right, no more speakers in. A quick show of hands of those that support 9. Yep, we've got a majority there. Excellent. All right, moving on to 10. It's just a matter of agreeing or disagreeing to adopt the regional public transport plan with two changes noted. Anybody wish to speak to that? No?
Suggest we agree.
Agree. Leslie, thanks, Darren. Anybody opposed to that? No, that's a majority as well, thank you. Moving on to the next one, which is one of the more contentious ones again, which is the issue of urban play. And so, range of options there. Seem to be quite a lot of public feedback on the range of options if we did spend the money, and also there was a volume of people that said, don't do it now, can't afford it. So, Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was good listening to what people said, members of our public, about the urban play strategy, and especially the children too, because in the long term they ultimately will be the users at whatever given stage. It's not about wanting to not provide a sense of belonging or safe play for our children. For me, it's about being wise with what we've got and what we need to focus on in this next term. And for me, at the moment, urban play's not in that house with me. We've got a pretty strong deck to deal with in the next term. I think that we would be wise to put this on hold, for the reasons being, at this time it's not affordable. So for me, I would be endorsing option 3.
Thank you. Trish.
I agree that we should adopt the play strategy, but I agree with Ria that this is not the time now to invest money in the actual play, the urban play. Or the alternative could be that we take, say, a figure like, say, 500,000 and use that, just as a smaller part. 4.5 million next year for urban play, even though it's developed as a over a period of time. I don't think, from what I've read and what people are saying, that it's the right time to do that.
Yep. Barry?
Yeah, Trish has taken all my flame out of that one. Yeah, I support urban play, but the
Not
$5 million,
Yeah.
we haven't got that to spend at the moment.
Darren?
So urban play, this is your third chomp at it. Option one, the distributed option, is the one that council's already indicated it wants to go with. I hear people leaning towards option 3 without realising actually there is no change to the rates for the coming year.
You can see that.
Know that.
So you're not actually saving anything for the year ahead. So there's no change on the rates figure that we're looking at now. You're just going against the two previous long-term plans and saying, no, let's not do it.
Yeah.
No, people have said let's not do it now. But it falls into that category that came through in submissions. If you stop it now, when does it come back in? If you cut it out now, when does it come back in? And I can see no advantage to kicking it out further, because you're not looking at it until 26, 27 as a distributed option, not only in the CBD but also in the nodes. So I'm still sitting with option 1.
So, Patricia, I know you got your hand up, so I've got a question for you before you comment. So, if we commence this work 26, 27, as Darren has suggested, we must rate for it somewhere along the line.
So we start rating for it, so the capital spend is due to start in 25, 26, and we will start rating for the repayment of that capital in the following year.
Yep. So it does have a flow-on effect.
So it does have a flow-on effect.
Yep.
It would impact the total capital budget for next year.
Yep. Thank you. Grant?
Yes, I'm in support of Councillor Bond's options around just option 3. We just don't proceed.
Thank you. Leslie?
Thank you, Mr Chair. So I'm going to speak contrary to several of the other speakers and in line with what Councillor Ludlow has said. To me, a fairly clear message came through from our submitters that option 1, the distributed option, was the preferred option. It was Council's preferred option that we went out to consultation with. I don't think we have had a direction from submitters strong enough to change that preference. And as Councillor Ludlow has pointed out and is clear in our documentation on page 23, there is no rates impact for this annual plan year. If we elect not to proceed now, then when do we ever proceed? We go back into that endless cycle of it's never the right time. This has been talked about for a very long time. It's certainly convinced enough of the submitters and this council when we put out our preferred option that it should go out as the distributed option as our preferred option. That allows a level of fairness to our whole play network, city centre, Bluff, South Invercargill and North Invercargill. It seems to me that it is by far the option we should continue with at this point.
Okay. Patricia, another quick question before I get to some others. So if we were to commence 25, 26 and we don't rate that year, but we would be rating the following years at 0.6 per year?
No, that is a 0.6 in total over the 3 years, so that the spends is split equally over 3 years.
Isn't it 4 years?
I think it's 3 years. The next 3 years, I think it's because we delayed it from this year.
Right, so this year was the 14,
it's to be condensed over 3 years. So there is some external funding attached to that as well. So it's roughly about $2 million a year.
Okay. Okay, got you there. Tom?
I support option 3, Chair. I mean, although this is a project which would not start until next year, there's an amount of staff time spent on it, not to mention an amount of council time spent on it, which will just continue unless we put the brake on. And that is not free. So I support option 3.
Okay, thank you. Alex?
Thank you. Just to address that point there from the Deputy Mayor that there's a lot of staff time and such that's been contributed to it. I wondered if he was meaning the play strategy itself, because that was funded by the government, not by us. So we can sort of put that to a side. I think the play strategy itself is entirely different, so I think we should just leave that one there. I'm really strong about this one, given that we have been through this in successive trienniums, and our community has consistently asked us for different play, and not just play, but permission to play options. And they've asked us not only to invest in the jewel in our crown in Queen's Park, but they've asked us to look at ourselves and go, actually, how much investment have we put towards Bluff lately? How much investment have we put towards Elizabeth Park and the south side of Invercargill? And if we halt this now and we don't allow it to continue, even though we know that you would be effectively pulling something out that's already accounted for, then how can we actually turn around and justify to ourselves that Invercargill is a fantastic place to raise a family and we are consistently investing in them? I don't believe that we have had enough community feedback over this period to say that we can pull the pin on it. 47% of our submissions received strong support for the distributed option. To turn around and yank it out now when we know that we can achieve it based on the envelope that we're looking at the moment at that 6.5, seems like we're just pulling the rug out from under ourselves and our families for what reason? So I'm very heavily, obviously, in favour of continuing with option 1.
Okay. Alan?
Well, Tom couldn't have said it better to me. It's pretty straightforward. There's quite a few other things I could say in my views on it, and I do have small children, but I think having a set amount of money aside for something that you don't know what you're actually going to do yet, which is a little bit like what Councillor Piper was talking about before with the horse before the cart type thing. That's what I see you doing by just having a lump of money and this gun, spend it over here. At the moment, the options that I've seen for what's been presented for play to me aren't good. So I support Councillor Campbell at the moment. I think option 3, and just stop working on it in the meantime. It just takes up too much time. It keeps coming back.
Steve?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think to Alex's point, I think you've got the play strategy. And then you've got these projects and how that rollout might look, and then the $5 million, which I think has been a factor in how we approach the strategy. I guess for me, I've said it before, this play would be top 3 of things that I get approached by our community with, and I think what I heard in the submissions by many people, including organisations that are at the forefront of our community and understand the need there. And that direction to me was continue to champion this vision for our city, and I think we're sending a clear message in supporting this that we still see a vibrant, inclusive, and attractive city, a city with heart in our vision. And I'm nervous about taking the foot off the gas and the message that sends to our community. I think many of our submitters on both sides actually said that. And I go back to a man, I've got his name written down here, that Kane Duncan said it can look different, but you've said you're going to do this. You've sown the seeds of vision for our city that we've grabbed a hold of, and now you're going to kick it down the road again. And that sat with me. A man, Chris Dawson, who I thought spoke beautifully, and he said not now for the $5 million. He still said just park it. That was with the strategy. But he was still, for me, saying, hey, look, it's a strategy of worth. And our city has signalled this, and his concern was around the $5 million right now. So I believe, sent a clear message that our community is wanting us to stay true to what we have said, and to still in some capacity hold on to a place strategy with an openness to changing how that might look. I think of the Bluffs, I think of Elizabeth Park. I was down there a few weeks ago, and I think of the statement that we're making to our city, that we are going to continue to invest in this vision for our city.
Before I come to you, Grant, Patricia, the $5 million strategy, who funds that? Did you suggest that government's got some fund?
We did have some funding from government for the play strategy development. That's now gone.
Gone, yeah.
So there was some, I think when we put the money in, there was some external funding against the capital, the build of, whether it be one or multiple, to playgrounds.
So we don't have money put aside for this?
We have $5 million put aside for this.
In the long-term plan.
In the long-term plan for a capital
Yeah, it's
program,
capital.
and we have
Yeah.
had
It's
it
already
for, it was put in the 2134, the 2131
Yeah, but-
LTP.
But for lay people listening, and when you say we put it aside, we don't actually have $5 million sitting in the bank, do we? We will borrow to do this work.
No,
then
this
we'll
is
pay.
a borrowed piece of
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yep, Grant.
Yeah, and also the thing to, talk to Alex and Steve's thing, we're not saying don't have play. We've got 54 playgrounds and there's about 70 play areas in the city, right? So we're still going to invest in them, but this is new capital. This is saying we're going to build new, and that requires maintenance. So we're actually going to stretch our maintenance budget further for our existing play areas, because we spend another $4.5 or $5 million on new play equipment. So why would we do that when we're in sort of austere times? Why would we not just keep investing in what we've got in those areas, and we might shrink some of those and take the money we would have put somewhere and put it in a better place, right? And I know, to speak for the Bluff community, they're really thinking through where's the best place to have play in there. They've got the new bike track, they've thought about down in the city, and they're working through with the various stakeholders around that, right? But this is about, do we want to put additional money in to build asset that requires maintenance? So there's additional maintenance costs to the spend. We're not saying don't keep our play areas, and we're not saying, let's not play in the city, have play as an important focus of our city. We're just saying don't put $4.5 million, build extra assets, have extra maintenance costs. Let's just look after what we've got and have that better. That's why I'm in favour of option 3.
Pania. Hello. Yes.
I'm in very much support of option 1, distributed option. And as for the investment in Bluff, and there was lots of discussion, is that our playgrounds need attention. And, yes, there's a lot of other play options, but what I heard at the hearing was that was people's preferred option. And there was info that didn't want to progress this piece of work at all. So literally having the understanding that there's no impact on our rates right here and now, I think this piece of work should still stay on the table.
Okay. Leslie.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'm not going to go into a long spiel because I've already said where I stand, but I would like to move 11A, option 1, be put to the vote.
So what I'll do is I'll do the show of hands again so that we get an idea, because I think we'll have quite a split vote on this. So that it really comes down to, do we want to progress, which is option 1, or do we want to not proceed at this stage, which is option C. So those in favour of option A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those in favour of option 3. That's the majority. Okay, number 12 is agree or disagrees to adopt the play strategy. Michael? How can we agree with that if we've already...
Pretty sure.
I haven't heard anybody who disagreed to adopting the play
Strategy.
strategy.
Okay.
Yeah,
The
different.
strategy is entirely separate.
different.
Okay. Anybody opposed to adopting this play strategy? Yes?
So can we just clear, what are we saying?
This is on
Agree to adopt
number
the play
12.
strategy, the document.
So So we're agreeing to the play strategy, we're just not starting it yet. Okay.
That's all we're doing.
Yep.
I'm happy to move that we agree to adopt the play strategy.
Yep.
I'll second that.
Yep, I think we got the numbers for that. And what the discussion was, right down to 14. Let you speak first to this, Trish, because I know you asked before.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I'm just, we were not just taking a vote before, I didn't see any hands raised.
Oh, sorry, well, I can do that, but it just seemed nobody was, with the exception of Alan, was disagreeing to number 12, but if you want to show of hands. All those that agree with the play strategy. That's a majority, thank you.
Just noting, councillor, that this is not the actual vote. There's no motion move. This is just a straw poll to indicate.
Yep.
We'll do votes against when we go through the motions.
Yep. But hopefully, by the time we get to that, Jamie will have some definitive figure for us, which he's nodding over in the background. Oh, Pania. Hello? I'm with you, Pania. You're muted.
She's frozen.
And she's frozen. Okay, 14 relates to the Community Wellbeing Fund. And
What
we
about
had,
13?
oh, sorry.
I don't think it's in the secretary.
Well, I don't see it as in there. It just says to be tabled.
So that was what we voted on infrastructure, isn't it? The option
Oh, was
around
it?
water service
Okay.
delivery.
So just to confirm that you chose the preferred option at
Yeah.
consultation, and this report is based
Oh, I
on
see what you
that,
mean.
so
Yeah.
no
Yep.
change.
Yeah.
Just a confirmation of that. So all those in favour of what we adopted earlier in the infrastructure?
Which was
which,
option one around the.
Option one, yeah,
enhanced.
which was the in-house one.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I did.
Majority, thank you. On to 14, which is, again, I'll come to you, Trish, which is your Community Wellbeing Fund. We've got 3 options there around either retaining the existing level of funding, reducing it by 100,000 or reducing it by 200,000.
Thank you. I have some questions, but first of all, it does say to pause this. Could you confirm that this is to be paused, or is it to be, if we adopt any of these, is that from a permanent change? Tricia?
So the resolution that was confirmed at the time of adoption for consultation was that this is permanently reducing on an ongoing basis down by 200,000. So if you wanted to change it to a pause, then you could change and put a new
Yep.
resolution.
Okay, so may I speak further?
Sure.
Through the deliberations, it seemed to me that, and with the last round we had, which was really a huge amount of requests, seems to me there's a real need out there for funding, and I'd like to perhaps change where we sit on this, or where we discuss sitting on this. I definitely did not mean this to be a permanent reduction. In my mind, it was a pause, so I've misread that. I would like to make sure that if it is a definite reduction, then I would retain, I'd go for B. If it was a pause for 1 year, I could recommend either 1 or 3. I'm quite comfortable about that, but not as a permanent reduction.
Okay. There we go. Alex.
Thank you, Chair. I really support Trish in that I think the full $200,000 cut is too large and too fast. We've got a lot of multi-year funding that we have come in, and a lot of community groups that rely on us for their operations funding, as well as, you know, events, projects, iconic events. And what we've seen through that Community Wellbeing Fund is that community groups tend to take every ratepayer dollar that they are fortunate enough to receive and really amplify that out in the community. They get the benefit of having so many people being able to associate with or to partake in all these cultural events or events in general, or community groups, I think is just too much of a community benefit to acts like this. I think putting it down with a saving of $100,000 does show that we are willing to be fiscally prudent, but I think at the same time it also allows us to maintain critical community momentum, because we've seen what an impact that can have, and when we can lose iconic events due to their sustainability not being long-term. So.
Yep. Just before I get on to other speakers, I'll just have a quick show of hands on options 1 and 3 to be reworded to say paused for the next financial year. Because you're right, Trish, I assumed when I was initially hearing discussion on it, it wasn't a long-term permanent reduction, it was just a next year type pause, and then we would revert back to the original levels, or we'd make some other decision, but it didn't fix us into $200,000 less. And we're going to end up with 5 options unless we have some understanding of what 1 and 3 actually means. So, quick show of hands for those that were happy to have that pause just for 1 year. That's an option 1 and 3. Yep, majority on that. So, just on to the next speaker, Rangi.
Look, I think we're playing with absolute fire here, and I'll tell you why. Because at breakfast this morning, and it's not often we discuss council at home.
You lie. You will do.
No, she just says, what's that medication for?
Yeah.
Anyway, the subject of wellbeing funding came up, and firsthand I heard that the Santa Parade funding is not approved, and so this is a critical iconic event, and if we even play around with funding, I'm very worried that the Santa Parade does not go ahead, and the funding that the Santa Parade is after is purely for the storage of floats. Now, trying to find storage for 22 massive floats is not easy in Invercargill, and it's not cheap, but they haven't been able to secure funding, so I'm worried about any changes. So do we want to kill Christmas? I don't know, we've got to think of this.
Is that a conflict?
Yeah.
Yeah, just noting, Councillor, you have declared a conflict with your wife's association with the Santa Parade.
Is she?
So Rangi, with that perceived conflict, I'm quite happy for you to continue to give us feedback on that. I think that's relevant.
I'm just feeding the information.
Yeah, I think it's relevant that we know
I'm
those
not
things.
asking for money.
Yeah, that's okay.
It's also incorrect.
That's what I think.
Ria.
Just for the record. Do you want to go? Yeah, you go.
No, I'll let you go because I've got something else to say, something
For
different.
a correction record, Mr Mayor, it might be instructive to listen to what Councillor Crackett has to say.
Right, Councillor Crackett has to say.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because as committee members we can attest to the fact that we most certainly have funded the Santa Parade, and no one on the Community Wellbeing Fund has any interest in killing Christmas. So just want to nip that one in the bud before that ends up in the media. And it's
So
false.
are you saying
Carefully,
that my
carefully.
information's incorrect?
Yep, so, Ria.
You say my information's incorrect?
Okay, do you two want to go over
Right.
the room and talk about it?
Ria.
Sorry. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just with this, I mean, it is a fairly contentious decision that we're looking at making, and the submitters by far did give us their 2 bobs worth about this. I guess when Trish moved this at our time of our meeting of going through our cost cutting, I had seconded this motion for it to be a $200,000 reduction for a pause, definitely, and we discussed it quite a bit at that meeting. So I just, like you, I was surprised to hear that it was a permanent thing. But I just wanted to, part of the reason why the community needs these funds is because they're putting on true iconic starting events and really good events that we're continuing on with. And I guess it's the trickiness to that, though. It's the devil's in the detail a little bit. We've had quite a high number of cases come and ask us for funding for employees, for rental market needs. You know, so I think that there's a bigger issue inside of that fund that will need to be looked at some stage to make sure that are we funding community events or are we funding a business plan that's not that great? And is that an actual true way that we should be spending ratepayer money?
I guess community wellbeing is more than just events, so it could be support services or whatever. Tom?
Chair, this is an item that we talked about a lot when we last met. I don't think anybody would deny that this is quite a painful thing, but we're making a lot of painful choices, and I think the problem of relitigating them one at a time is that we forget that the starting point when we started doing this journey was we were looking at 14.9% rates increase, and we said, well, you know, what can we cut now? If we just simply backtrack, if we simply backtrack and go, we'll find ourselves back up there again. My own view is that it was very gracious of Trish to recommend option 1 in the first place. I certainly heard the decision has been for 1 year, and we've just clarified that. But I think we made the right decision before, so I support option 1, but on a 1-year basis.
Sure, thank you. Trish, again.
Sorry, I meant to add something, and what you just said, Ria just said, was relevant to that. I believe that the committee would look very closely at the criteria and about our priorities, that we would have a workshop again to say, so now in a restrained, if it is a restrained climate, and it is, how can we best serve the people? What kind of priorities do we need to establish, and where do we need to adjust things? So that's some work that the committee needs to do to reflect whatever the result is, but I didn't mention that before, I'm sorry.
Yep, thank you. Steve?
Thanks, Chair. I think the community was loud and clear on this one. Huge need in our community right now for this fund, so I certainly wouldn't support option 1. I also in the last couple of weeks went to visit a Congolese community garden that received in the hundreds of dollars. I was moved by that community and what they're doing and what their aspirations are. I went over the weekend to a Nepalese cultural event in celebration of who they are in our community. I was inspired by that, and just seeing that need and seeing how this fund is supporting our community, I was inspired by. So I'm fine with lowering for 1 year, so I would lean to option 3. I understand that we need to make some cuts as well, so option 3 is where I would land.
Yep. Grant?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I sit on another trust that has just had a study done that says that every dollar invested in this channel receives a $4.50 return. So it's a massive investment we're making, and a multiplier we can apply to this. So I think there's a real need in our community for this. I've been lucky enough to sit in on the Community Wellbeing Committee on a number of applications, and I'm always impressed with the effect those people are having in the community, positive. So I'm probably sitting in option 3 around, you know, pause. I think it allows us to step down but still meet a really important need within our community.
Okay, quick straw show of hands again for option 3 to see whether there's a majority in that. Seems to be that's the case. Option 3, which is a reduction of 100,000, not 200. So all those in favour of 3? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should start again. Hang on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those for 1, which is a reduction of 200,000. 2, 4. Yeah, majority sits with.
Excuse me, can we also have a vote on number 2?
Certainly, yep. Those in favour of number 2? 1. Okay, so the majority at this stage is with 3. For that, Jamie, as you're going forward. The Built Heritage Fund. And again, we've got 3 options in front of us. Again, pausing the annual fund for 1 year. Retaining the annual fund or reducing it by 100,000 to 100,000. Yes, Leslie.
I do make the declaration that I chair Council's Heritage Subcommittee.
Yep.
I do also point out that this, unlike the Community Wellbeing Fund, the pausing of the Heritage Building and Seismic Strengthening Fund was a pausing of the entire amount in that fund. I do want to say that there were in fact more submitters opposed to that pause of the built heritage funding than there were opposed to the reduction in the community wellbeing funding. So that is on record in our minutes at page 31. The submitters noted the importance of our built heritage to Invercargill. Many submitters talked about the pride engendered, particularly on the main streets of Invercargill, by the contribution of that heritage funding to the appearance of many of our designated heritage buildings. The role that the funding played in implementing the heritage strategy, and in one case supporting Heritage Week in March of each year, as well as the encouragement given to private building owners through being able to utilise a small subsidy on their projects through that fund. So I would urge councillors to consider the not pausing the entire fund, but going for option 3 to reduce the amount for the 1 year, not to pause the entire fund.
So Leslie, just a question from me, which is wearing your conflicted hat that you declared. So does this fund a more recent development within council? Because I think last term we were struggling to get any traction with the upgrading of some of the facades and some of the buildings.
The strategy was adopted by council in 2019, so the fund has been in place since that point.
Yep, and the other question...
We did, in adopting that strategy, councillors may remember that we reduced the number of buildings to which the strategy would apply.
Okay.
And that was quite deliberate so that the fund would have greater impact.
Okay.
And that was consulted on quite extensively, and the feedback from the public was that they saw sense in a smaller number of buildings having the access to that funding.
Okay. Grant.
Yeah, I'd be in favour of all this money being put into one building on the corner of Spey and D Street and that getting sorted.
That won't be enough, as you well know. It won't
It's
be
the
enough.
only heritage building we should invest in the next period of time, because it's a disgrace.
Yep. Any further discussions? Yeah, Alex.
Hey, look, oh, Alan or Alex?
Alex.
Oh, it was me. Okay, thank you, Chair. Hey, look, I think this is another really sticky one in that it's kind of similar to play, obviously completely different industry, but it is another investment in the people and the buildings and the heritage of our city. What heritage is non-renewable, so once it's gone, it's not exactly like we're building things that we're building like they were then to prop them back up again. Once a trust that looks after heritage buildings folds, it's also near impossible to revive. I think, you know, we heard from Troopers Memorial Trust, we heard from Heritage South, and we heard from individual property owners that have said that if that fund wasn't available for them, they wouldn't actually have been able to complete the work. We've seen the changing face of our city. You know, we've ourselves invested in new city streetscapes and, you know, Walkner Place and ICL, and if we aren't expecting or we're not helping and enabling individual property owners to be able to do the same, especially when we're considering heritage buildings, because they're significantly far more expensive to retain than if we were building new, then I think we are going to go backwards in terms of what our city face looks like. And I know yourself, Mayor Clark, when you had first become the mayor, you really wanted to see, I think it was about 170 heritage buildings in Invercargill painted, and you know that was something that you would yourself campaigned on. I think it's a pretty well leveraged fund now that's had high impact out there in the community, and given that we've just axed $5 million out of play, I don't see why we can't at least retain 100,000 for heritage. Thanks.
Alan.
Yeah, I also sit on this committee, and this committee it's helped a lot with the restoration of a lot of old buildings around the town. But at the moment, we sit in tough economic times, and it does say here pause the annual funding for 1 year. So I actually support option 1 for the fact that we're in tough economic times. And to be fair, the older buildings that do need help, I'm sure they can all wait another year. I mean, they've been sitting there for a lot of years already, and it doesn't really make that much difference. I mean, as we know on the funding committee, some people come to us and they don't have enough money for some time anyway at times. So I don't think a year's pause is going to make a great deal of difference, because it is only a pause. So I support that we're in a tough economic time. We need to save wherever we can for the good of the whole community.
Yep. Thank you. Any further speakers? And that's my position as well, even though I did a lobby on that to start with. Oh, sorry, Tom, I'll come to you in a minute. My view is we're in tough times, and 1 year to a heritage building that might be 100 years old is not going to break the building. So, Tom, you like old buildings?
Well, I mean, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'm concerned that having made tough choices and debated these things a couple of months ago, we are finding ourselves kind of compromising back upwards again on pretty much every line item. And nobody's saying that heritage is unimportant. Nobody's saying that the community welfare fund is unimportant. But we made these decisions faced with the fact that there was an unacceptable rates rise for people. So I continue to support, as Alan does, the option 1, but very clearly that it is only a 1 year pause.
Rangi.
Well, it's amazing listening here to people saying times are tough and we've got to make these cuts, and we talked about these cuts. Yet yourself, Nobby, at last year's tourism conference, told the conference that we were building the flashiest museum in New Zealand. Now, on one hand, how can you have the flashiest museum and you're making a $200,000 cut to a critical...
Point of order, is this related to this discussion?
Yeah.
I mean,
I
is
know
it
what you're
relevant
saying.
to the discussion we're having about heritage buildings?
Yep.
What I'm saying is that on one hand,
Hang on, slow down. Point of order comes to me, not to anybody else. I will allow it because the councillor's digging himself into a rabbit hole. So, finish what you have to say,
Okay.
Rangi.
Well, it's a good thing I'm married to Alice, because I think she's tied up with the rabbit hole. Well, on one hand, we want to build the flashiest museum in New Zealand, and on the other hand, we are cutting critical things for our community. Sorry, I can't live with that. And again, back to Chris Luxton, cut the fantasies and do what we're supposed to do. So I just have to throw that in. I can't live with myself if I sit here and listen to this sort of two different sets of rules.
Thank you for that, and I will respond because you've raised it many times, so I will respond again. And just to refresh your memory, in this triennium, this council has cut $50 million of capital projects. So it's a bit of a stretch to say that we've focused on a museum, which was the priority for our community, not for us around the table. They gave us a very clear message. They wanted a museum that's built to spec, to the future of 50 to 100 years forward, and that's what we've delivered. So thank you for your comments, but you seem to forget that we've also cut our costs accordingly to make that happen. So we've got a combination of 1 and 3 seems to be what the table's suggesting. So I'll just put 3 as the first option, which is to reduce the fund in half by 100,000, which is what Leslie suggested. And if that doesn't have the majority vote, I'll default to the option 1, which is to pause the fund for 1 year. So those in favour of 3, if they'd like to show their hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, those opposed, supporting 1. That's the majority. Thank you for that. Okay.
2.
Oh, yep, 2. Thank you. Sister City program. And yes, I've going to suggest that you talk to us first anyway.
Thank you. I think the point that was made in the submission from the Friendship Association was around the impact of the optics of not having something, but at the same time, they were also big enough to recognise that times are tough and that some austerity was called for. The option in the paper of reinstating at a lower level for that 1 year, in my mind, would be a reasonable way through. You've got at least 2 school visits here in the first month of your new financial year. Or are we sending them away? It's about how we value that relationship, which has been going for 32 years, and the one with Sue Chen, which has been going for over a decade. I think to hit the pause button and recognising that that's what it is for a year is a risk. So reinstating at a lower level is what I'd be advocating for.
Okay. Tom?
When we talked about this, I was certainly thinking about the pause in terms of not visiting anybody. I was not thinking of the pause meaning in terms of we spend absolutely nothing at all, although I appreciate that was how it was taken up. So I would support what Darren has said. I'm not sure we actually need, all of the money that's shown in option C to do that. I mean, Darren says that is what it costs, and fair enough. But I wouldn't have thought it would have been 25,000 to support those things other than travel. There's probably a question involved in that to Darren.
Yes, there is. I think we do provide some financial support to the Kumagaya Friendship Association, and there are some hosting responsibilities like the visiting schools that I mentioned. That,
but 25,000?
Partially that money was sent away and offset for travel, and bearing in mind that I think even the Friendship Association said once a triennium is better than every 2 years, which is how things used to be. So, 20, 15, something to walk away from it sends a poor message, I think.
Just to your question, Tom, I mean, the schools that come in don't have a significant cost. They meet here. We put an afternoon tea on for them. We do speeches. They get a little city council badge that the kids will take away with them. I think that's just a small amount of money. Lucky if it's a couple of thousand at the most. You're right. That's what I thought too, was that we wouldn't physically visit.
So I'm saying I would support C, Mr. Mayor, but I would invite us to maybe think about a number less than 25 would be my...
Yep. Leslie?
15.
That's what I was going to suggest, that if we replace the 25 with 15, that may be a much more realistic amount, which makes it clear that we won't be supporting travel costs as such for overseas travel in that year. So 15 for 2025-26 and 50,000 thereafter would be a more reasonable approach, and would give the message that the Kumagaya Association was suggesting was important, that council was not cancelling the relationship.
Yep, so from either yourself or Darren or both, what are we spending the 15,000 on?
Sorry?
What are we spending the 15,000 on?
I did suggest 10, which was
Okay.
the lower figure.
10 is fine.
Yep, because I don't think it's much if we don't travel.
It's the catering, it's the school hosting.
Yep.
It's when you have
Bring
guests, we do give them gifts.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But 10 would do it for
10
that
10
12
would be
months.
fine.
Yep.
Yeah.
Patricia?
Chair, I was just going to suggest that perhaps we ask Mr Morris what he could provide for that 10,000, given that he is the service owner for this.
Anything but his tie.
Good news, Mr Mayor, the tie's not for sale.
Oh, we could raffle it.
So basically this amount of money covers our hosting obligations, which I think, as Councillor Ludlow and Mayor Clark have also said, is it covers gifts, but it also covers any food that we provide, for example, a morning or afternoon tea or a meal. It provides support to the Kumagaya, it would provide support to the Kumagaya Association. The $25,000 figure was designed with the potential for a visit to Suchen because they had invited us sometime in 2026. It was providing that level of coverage should council decide to take that up, noting the conversation that has been said today that those travel arrangements would be paused for a year. That was what the $25,000 was originally designed. The $10,000 will cover what we need it.
Question
to cover.
through you then, does that also include our membership of GCNZ?
Yes, all those things come through that.
You got that, Jamie? Yep, thank you.
So,
So, just a quick vote on that. Show of hands for option 3.
10,000, yes.
Majority. Anybody opposed? No, excellent. Great South debate, another contentious one. So, 3 options. 1, leave the funding where it is. 2, to reduce the funding down. And 3, to have a 5% reduction in their funding.
If no one's going to go, I'll go.
Yeah, Ria.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to keep the funding as it is.
Yep, thank you.
I think that given the amount of reductions and changes that they had last year, you know, they know that this money will affect their bottom line, and we know that too. I think it would be an absolute mistake for us to take away funding to an organisation that actually does do a lot of good work at it in our community for our economic futures and current too. So I'll leave it as it is.
What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting to leave the funding as it is at the same level.
Yep.
Option 2.
Option 2, yep.
Happy to support that, Chair.
And Ria, I support that as well. So last year, we sought them to do a reduction of staff, and they took 25% of their staff out, which is a huge amount, created them a great deal of pain, on the assumption that they would deliver a lower level of service but more targeted from us, and that we'd have some differential between what we want them to do and what other councils would want them to do, and also acknowledging that Gore doesn't pay its way. So I think cutting again, I think will create a huge amount of pain. In mind, Trish?
Thank you. I listen to what you say and I agree with you, but I do believe that in light of what Tom keeps saying is we can't just keep reinstating these. We're going to end up with 14% again. I think option 3 is a better option. We've signalled to them that we were going to reduce it. They know that that was in the water, it was in the wind, whatever, and I believe that in line with everything else today that we've done today, we need to go for option 3.
Okay. Ringy.
I actually think this is the ambulance at the bottom of the cliff. I think the Great South situation needs a more in-depth discussion, research, and to find out exactly what we want out of it. The Kids Zone gave us the cancellation of that was unexpected, and obviously their capability of not putting it on was a bit of a shock to me, but it happened. And so I think we really need to revisit where we are with Great South, and I think I would support the same level of funding and wait and see what we really want to get out of it, and actually face our demons. If we're not happy with it, let's talk about it. If we are, great, but this is beating around the bush, sorry. So I'm supporting retaining the funding.
Okay. Tom?
Without just repeating the same thing I've said, I support Trish's position and I would support option 3.
Okay. Grant?
Yeah, I'm of the same view. I think we've signalled to them there's a reduction coming, so I'm supportive of option 3.
Okay, Steve?
Thanks, Joe. I really support what Councillor Pottinger has said. Look, I've been openly critical on around Great South and I guess my expectations on what delivery looks like for this organisation, but I think if you continue to cut and cut and cut, then we're sending a clear signal that we're not going to continue to champion the work that we expect them to do. So I'm advocating for maintaining at this stage the same level of funding.
I've lost you on that, so just help me a little bit.
Oh,
So you
I
want
agree.
to retain the level of funding?
Yeah, I
You
do,
don't
because I
want
think
to
if you continue to cut, I think the
yeah.
reviews, the
I'm with you.
expectations should be, I think there's room to get this right, but I
Yep.
don't think for me that comes by continuing to cut.
Yep. Okay. Yep. There's another option for us if we wanted to address whether we have Great South in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's not
But
Yeah.
this is,
we can
but
work towards that.
but getting there by 1,000 cuts is probably not the way to go.
That's, yeah, you've summed
Yep.
it
I
up.
see. I understand what you're saying.
Yep.
That's it. Okay. So we've probably landed on one of two options, which is the current level of funding. Am I right? No, sorry,
No,
two
two.
or
Just
three.
two. Yeah.
2 or 3, so I'll put 3 first, which is that they receive a 5% cut as opposed to a 10% cut, just to get a feel for that. So what have we got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, love it. Chairman's roll. Those in favour of retaining the funding? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I get the casting vote, I guess, if we want to go that way, but I will revisit this issue at the end of the thing, because just to make sure that we've got this right. But if it comes to a chairman's casting vote, I'll retain the existing level of funding.
Which is in keeping with the tradition of a casting vote to maintain the status quo.
Well, it is, absolutely. So at this stage, we've got that Stadium Southland, another contentious area for cuts. And we've got the options there again of a 10% cut, a 5% cut, and retaining the existing funding. And just as we get to this part, I know that Tom will declare an interest because he's got the chair's role on the trust that oversights the board that runs the stadium, but it's important that we have his voice in the room so we know what's going on in the background, which we won't know otherwise. So Trish first.
I've done a lot of thinking about this, obviously as we all are, and I've looked at the submissions and listened to what people have said and written, and one thing that's very clear for me is that this supports the very social fabric of our community. When I heard the girl from Touch Southland, who has worked with those kids who perhaps don't have other opportunities and has grown the numbers so much and are paying higher fees already, I believe any further cut would impact on many children and families more than we would like to help in our community. So I'm advocating that we go back to the status quo for Stadium Southland.
I think we also got similar feedback, Trish, from Volley South as well.
Yeah.
They gave the same sort of growth numbers as well. Okay, Ria.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm also advocating for not removing any of the funding to Stadium Southland. In fact, in the future, I'd like to see more go to them for what they do in our community. They are the heartbeat. They hold our children there after school. They actively play with so many activities on there. If we start stripping out our community's heartbeat, what are we going to be left with? That would be a really big concern. So I'm advocating for keeping the funding and leaving Stadium Southland alone.
Barry?
Yes, I totally support both Trish and Ria's stand on this. I think we should support them straight up.
Grant, is that a scratch of the head or is it a scratching the head? Alrighty.
I actually can't understand how this actually got there. We must have put it in there, but I'm really struggling. One of the greatest assets we've ever built in the city, and we want to wind it back. It's like closing D Street for a day a week just to save on the town seal.
Yep. Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. People say we've got one jewel in our crown, and that's Queen's Park. Well, this is the second one, Stadium Southland. If we reduce our funding, we're penalising a lot of families. There's up to 12,000 young people and adults go there weekly. Years ago, there was a talk of reducing funding and put on a charge of stadium, we suggested to the stadium at that stage that they should put a gold coin donation of $2. But if you had a family of 3 and they were going there 4 times a week, you multiply that, it's just, it's not right.
Yep.
We should retain the funding as it is. We're
Yep,
so
thank-
lucky we've got a stadium of that calibre right on our back door.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Darren?
If we're not making a cut to Great South, I don't see that we could make a cut to the stadium. When we went through the long-term plan, the one submission that really stood out for me was the one that came from the stadium. When they said, we don't want an increase. All we want is the freedom to be able to use the current allocation however we want, because we were apportioning some off to depreciation. And they said, if we get that flexibility, we think we can make it work and not have to come and ask you for more. So I still want to sit with that. They had a plan, and I think this disrupts it, bearing in mind that all businesses are facing tough times and increased costs. The reduction when the costs are going up for a hugely used community asset are a real threat. And I still want to give them that chance to make their plan work.
Yep, thank you. Oh, Leslie.
For consistency, if we're not reducing Great South, then we don't really have an argument for reducing the stadium. But I would like to point out that we very much have an argument for going back to our regional partners about the funding of the stadium. This conversation is not finished. The stadium, even as submitters, even the clubs that have been referred to, told us that a certain proportion, I think one of them said as high as 30% of their members were out of Invercargill.
Yep.
In the region, but outside Invercargill. We still have an issue to discuss with our regional partners as to the way in which that regional facility is funded, and I do not think that we should forget that because we appear to be going for the decision of leaving the funding where it currently is. But I think that conversation very much cannot be forgotten.
Yep.
I'd also like to point out that many of the submitters who came to us from those clubs talked about their members not being able to afford an additional cost if the stadium was to increase the price for clubs. And I do just want to point out that in our fees and charges, we are asking community organisations to pay for the use of the library facility, the upstairs room, which they have had free in the past. And in fact, the same argument applies to those community groups. Should we in fact be saying to them, if we agree with the submitters on the stadium that no, their clubs shouldn't have a higher fee put on, then should we not also be looking at that community cost for using our library upstairs room also not being charged to those small community groups who are in exactly the same financial situation, in fact in some cases in a worse financial situation because they are much smaller groups who are working very much on a volunteer gold coin donation. So I just make those points. I agree that we should go for the option that says we will keep the annual funding as is, but we cannot forget that conversation with our regional partners, and we shouldn't forget the fact that we are virtually saying here we agree those sports clubs shouldn't be charged more for stadium use. Should that not also apply to our community groups who are using our library facility? Thank you.
So reasonable to assume that Tom's taking notes as we go through this discussion, because he's already provided us with information to say that while they have some cash reserves at the moment in the trust, that's starting to disappear fairly quickly. So that somewhere along the line, the next year or two, there's going to have to be some serious discussions about where to with the funding of the stadium, because all stadiums
exactly
lose
why
money.
I'm saying that regional conversation has
absolutely.
not, you know, we cannot forget, we have to keep talking to our regional partners on that.
Yep, for sure. Get that done. Okay.
I'll just
Oh, sorry, Steve.
No, sorry, I think it's probably appropriate that I sit this vote out, but I think it's the community made this case loud and clear.
Yep. So we've got the option of retaining the existing funding at 700,000, which is number 3. All those in favour? Yep. Okay, anybody opposed? All right, Alan. All right. Patricia, you might help us walk us through 15 to start with, 15A through.
So 15A is
Just all 16, not 16A.
Not 16.
Not yet.
So 15A is reflecting that as the capital delivery teams have been working through their delivery programs for this year, they've recognised that there's some work not going to get completed. We had a very optimistic capital delivery target. So what we've said that because that some of that work is not going to be achieved, and we've put a number of budget changes through as a result of that, there will be lower depreciation expense next year because those assets won't be in use. So that comes through and has to be factored through into the rates. So just as you noting that as a result of the rephasing of the capital program, there will be lower depreciation expense, so that will be lowers the rates impact. So that's a noting, so there's no options there.
Yep.
B is that in relation to Te Anua, we have a particularly large external grants funding budget that we're going for. We are looking to rephase that. We know now some of the committed funds that we have received, what we were likely to receive this year, and also the discussions that Council have been having with Invercargill City Holdings about an additional dividend for Te Anua, and whether that actually gets received this financial year, which will cut down our debt going into next year. So that results in the rephasing of that external grant funding of 8.5 million in 24-25 and 2 million in 25-26. So that results in the associated debt funding costs dropping because we're getting that money earlier than what we had originally thought. So those are just off the back of the request for the dividend, which will come through in next week's finance and projects. But that's a request that will get confirmed then about the timing of that dividend. Part C of this resolution is that when we went out to consultation, we had we had included the setup costs of ring fencing for the water service delivery option structure. We've had a thought about how the options of funding that, so we were going to rates fund it. But actually, it's got some duration and benefit over multiple years that it is actually appropriate to, and if it was a CCO, it would go and borrow for those setup costs, that we should actually borrow for that setup costs. So that actually drops down the water rates and the combined rate there by just changing that we would spread that 200,000 from memory over multiple years. Okay, D is the depreciation options that we talked about at the start of the meeting about changing the amount of rates funding of depreciation for our sewage and our stormwater asset classes. We had gone out to consultation with those at 90% rates funded to drop them to 80 or 85 or retain them at 90 as we consulted. They have significant rates impact. Those are big numbers when we talk about them. They do come, as we discussed earlier, with some risk. And that's probably the discussion that could have the potential for a significant increase next year if we have to bring those up to 100 on the same basis that we're depreciating now. But at the moment, we are, what I'm seeing around the country, there's varying degrees of depreciation funding across their water assets. as are close now to where we would need them to be.
I'll come back to that last bit in a minute, but if we just do a straw poll on A, B and C, just to get a feel that...
Well, there's no options with A, B and C.
I understand
Mayor.
that, but we'll still just, that we agree or disagree with those A, B and C. So all those that agree with A,
Yep.
B and C. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that's a majority. So coming on to the other one, which is D, has 3 options there. I'm mindful of what Tom said earlier on. He said we've got, even though we are depreciating at a lower rate, we aren't actually doing more work in the space. And him being an engineer, it's the work that counts, not the depreciation. And I am mindful, I think, that the government's primary focus on the well-being of our communities is around fresh water as opposed to sewerage and stormwater. So, like you say, Patricia, we don't know where the land lies yet from DIA and others around that, but I would certainly support the 80% figure at this stage, but I'm happy to have discussions. Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I'd be more inclined to support the 85%. I think there's enough uncertainty in exactly what's going to come out in the wash to take that middle ground, steering away from the 90% is perhaps going too far at the moment with the uncertainty about exactly what is going to come out, but the 85% seems to me a prudent position to take that gives some cushioning away from a very large increase in the following year if that's what comes out in the wash, if we take the middle ground of 85.
So Patricia and Jamie, the 6.55, was that based on the 90% figure or the 80 or 85?
80%.
80%, okay, thank you. Nobody else want to talk about Three Waters? Tom?
So I support the 80%, and I'm really just repeating, Chair, what I said at the beginning. It's the physical work that's done that matters. We're actually predicting, forecasting an increase in capital spending, quite a significant increase, bringing forward some of the work in water, not pushing it back, bringing it forward. And the essential services performance driver, which is a critical one, basically how much depreciation are we actually physically doing, increases from 94% to 96%. So we're increasing the amount of work we're doing. So I think, you know, the accounting adjustment where you count it, you know, 80% and 90%, again, I would just suggest that people look at the physical work that's done, which is increasing by this prediction.
Sure. Grant?
And won't change, actually, if you change the predicted, if you change it to 85, it's not going to change the amount of physical work it's done.
No. Grant?
Yeah, I'm same view as Deputy Mayor. I don't think this takes on excessive risk in terms of our infrastructure program, and as the Deputy Mayor's highlighted, in fact, we're bringing forward some really critical things like that rising main investment. So I think we can sit comfortably in, but still enable, you know, a reasonable rate set for our community. So that's why I'm supportive of the first option.
Sure. And Alex?
I just wondered, have we really considered though that, you know, like with all the unknowns and that if we are reducing it so significantly to 80% and then the way that depreciation is funded changes and we haven't cushioned enough, how significant that could be to bring up to the 100%? Because that is initially what we have had indicated to us as possible, and I guess to me it just feels like we would be running the risk early of kicking the can down the road for us to just have to come and pick up again.
Yep.
To me it's too ambiguous of what's potentially coming in the sense, rather than what we working within the framework we know now. Like my preference would be, like Councillor Soper, to stick with the 85% at least.
Yep. So just as a response to that, I guess, if we had to pay $1 today for this and $1 next year, and we don't pay $1 today, we'll probably pay $2 next year. But we're not paying any more. It's just when we pay that's the key issue. And if the criteria in the short to medium term out of the regulators or out of DIA don't require us to go to 90 or 100% too quickly, then we've gained. If on the other hand they do push us, we're not paying any more than we would have paid, but we're just changing when we pay, I guess. So we will get a spike, but at the end of the day, it gives us other options in next year's budget, again, to smooth those spikes. So while the rates might go up for water, well, for sewerage and stormwater, we do have options to take money away elsewhere. So we can soften the spike, I guess, is what I'm saying. Never mind. Ria.
Mr Mayor, you just said that it gives us other options in the next year's budget, so are you coming back?
Sorry?
Your commentary just said that it gives us options in next year's budget, so my question to you was, are you coming back?
No, definitely not coming back. Rangi.
I think at this stage, talking about sewerage, it's really irrelevant to either A, B or C, because we're looming with the Bluff wastewater perhaps not going the way we thought it would go. That is looming as a massive, massive infrastructure investment that we were going to have to tackle. So I'd be in favour of trying to get as much in the kitty as we can now with that around the corner. So instead of the 7 million, whatever number you want to put on that now, it's going to hit us.
Leslie.
Thanks, Mr Chair. Look, we were originally told that we would be expected to go to 100% depreciation for sewerage and stormwater within 2 years. My point in saying 85 would at least give us a cushion is exactly that. We don't know for sure whether that 2 years is going to be what results, but the difference between 80% depreciation for sewerage and stormwater and 100% is 20%. If we can cushion that by going to 85 this year, it seems to me that's a sensible cushion, but that may not be how others are indicating they feel.
Yep. So no other speakers. We'll have a quick straw poll. Are you with me, Grant?
Sorry?
Yeah. So we'll just have a quick show of hands, and I'll just put the 80% option up first to see where the votes lie. So that's the top one there, which means that we leave it at 80%, which is what we've currently got built in, and see whether there's a majority for that. And if not, then we'll head to one of the other two options. So those in favour of 80, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a majority. Okay, the next one we look at is the issue of commercial water rates. So just give you an update on where we got to this morning. Had a meeting with management this morning, which Patricia and Trudy were both in, and Michael Day as well. And we discussed the two submitters that came in from the meat company and the dairy company down south, and went through quite a few issues. And so I'll tell you where we got to, but somebody in the room from staff needs to give us the final information on that. I wanted to know whether the industrial rate that was being asked of those two companies, and in fact of all industrial plants, was higher than the residential rate that we pay. And we got a little bit of mixed feeling about that in the room, saying that, well, we don't know how much per rate paid. Well, that wasn't the issue. The issue is how much do we pay per cubic metre for residential, and how much do we pay for cubic metre for industrial, which includes farming. And so if they're equal at the moment, and we've had some catch up, then that's a fair process. The degree of how quickly we caught it up and the way we manage that is something for us to learn from, I think, would be a fair reflection. And so that was the issue of that. What also came up, I guess, as part of that discussion is whether local government in the future would recognise very large users of water, as they do sometimes with large users of power. And at this stage, given that we've only got one water supply, we're probably not in a position to progress that at this stage. But if somebody from staff, I don't know who's going to do it, Who's looking at whom here? Oh,
I
Patricia, sorry,
believe
Patricia.
Patricia's going to start and she will hand to me if
Yeah, so really what we wanted to know was, because the comments that were in the paper did suggest that the big plants were now subsidising residential rates, and that wasn't my take on it. But if you can help with that.
I can help with that. So when we set the water rate per cubic metre,
Yep.
it is calculated based on the average cost to deliver the whole of the water supply activity,
Yep.
divided by the average number of cubic metres processed through Branksholme.
Yep.
So roughly at the moment, that's about 8 million cubic metres a year.
Yep.
So that works out, and that's where we get the 2.35 now that you've made the depreciation. You've made the changes above. If you make the changes above, that's at $2.35 a cubic metre. Where we had been in the past was that we weren't getting full recovery from those water meter users of the cost of water. They were being subsidised in essence by residential. So as you know, rates are set based on the net cost of delivering an activity. So there has to be some estimates about the amount of commercial use done, and that's how we get, that's why the rates change a little bit, because we, with smoothing and that we play, so you're not seeing the same increase to the water users as what you are seeing to the residential. So there's a slight difference because we're trying to smooth it. It is hard based on the information, but we're doing our best to smooth based on actual expected costs versus estimated usage of water across the whole city.
So just want to come back to the discussion we had this morning. So for me, it doesn't make sense about whether you use water or what volume you use. My assessment would be treated water is treated water. Doesn't matter where it goes down the pipes or who the end user is. The end users should all be paying the same amount for it. There shouldn't be any discounting because they're industrial or non-industrial. So I guess what I was trying to find out this morning, and you can help me with now, is those two industrial sites got a 200% increase last year, which is very significant, and 30 or 31% this coming year. So as a safeguard to that, can I be assured that the rates they are paying are not vastly different from what they would be paying if they were drawing to a residential property per cubic metre?
It's all based on the same.
Yep, okay, well that's fine then that's a fair process. Now the other issue that was raised by the submitters, I'll come to you, Erin.
Can I just clarify?
Yep.
I'm just wanting to check, because based on the conversations that I had with the submitters, are you just seeking to clarify that they will continue to pay the same rate as a residential person essentially will, or were you looking to clarify that they won't be paying significantly more in future years?
Well, I think a fair process for them is to that they pay water as water. It doesn't matter where you draw it and what you use it for.
Yep.
If it's treated, that's the cost to us as a council, and everybody should pay equally. And if Patricia's saying that they do that now, then that's fair. Now, what they will say is they've had 231% increase in 2 years,
Yes.
and we have some, I guess, some management of that in the future if we were to face that again, those sorts of issues.
I think the key piece there is that the really significant one we had last year
Yep.
was around moving to really to user pays.
Yep.
Because previously we didn't have those commercial rates high enough to, and the rates burden
Yep.
was falling on the rest of the community. So that was then tidied up.
Yep.
But what I'm conscious of is that we have a long-term plan with some significant Three Waters costs in it,
Yep.
which means we will continue to see Three Waters costs rise throughout the long-term plan.
Yep.
And that will be reflected in the fees and charges also continuing to increase.
Yeah, but that doesn't impact industrial because they're industrial. They're just a user, aren't they? So the Three Waters cost is borne out to everybody that uses water. Yeah, that's fine, because clearly, contrary to what they said, and I don't think they were being malicious, but what they said was that they now feel as though they're subsidising residential, and clearly that's not the case. So, and as I think as Grant said at the time when they were submitting, he asked a question to the effect of, in an ideal world, we would have potentially smoothed that out over a period of 5 years to allow them to plan ahead as well, because those sort of sudden increases can put off investors. I don't think they were fair to give us that feedback. Tom?
Well, I'm probably only repeating what's been said, but
Yep.
I mean, the thing that I really needed to hear, and we just have heard it, is that the changes over the last 2 years have simply brought a level playing field
Yep.
into play, so that we now have commercial industrial users paying the same rate per cubic metre as households do.
Yep.
And I think it's difficult to argue that that's anything other than fair.
Yep.
So for that reason, I would support leaving it as it's proposed to be.
Yep. Grant?
Yeah, I think the piece I took out of the submission was that ability for them to plan forward was as big a part of their submission as the cost of it. So just, Aaron, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here, but given where we're heading to with, you know, what we agreed earlier with the council, well, the changes to our Three Waters, the way we do Three Waters, and then the planning we've got in place, we should be in a position to be able to forecast a sort of a trajectory of cost to them over a 5-year period. Is that correct? It may not be actual because each time it'll change, but we would be able to go to them and say, look, you should budget for an average of 10% increase year on year to your Three Waters services that we provide to you, or something to that effect.
Absolutely, I believe so, because we've got in place the current increases in our overall Three Waters costs over the remainder of the 10-year period, and then that would also then be reflected in the fees and charges.
Yeah, so I think that's what we need to do for those businesses, so we can allow them to plan.
Yep.
And that's as much of what they submitted to as opposed to the
It
cost.
was.
I would certainly hope that they're not expecting ratepayers to subsidise their water. I mean, they do make a valuable contribution in terms of employment and economic development, which we need as well, but don't think that comes at the expense of ratepayers subsidising their water, so I'm happy where we've landed.
Yep. Oh, Leslie?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Look, at the start of this whole issue on the water fees, what we were informed of was that the commercial rate per cubic metre was well below the residential rate, and that in fact residential was subsidising commercial. On that basis, I certainly agreed that that had to be brought into line, because water is water, commercial, residential should be paying the same rate. We now appear to be confident that we have reached that point where neither commercial is subsidising residential or residential is subsidising commercial, which is where we wanted to arrive at. The proposal or the option put here that over 100,000 cubic metres that we would give a discount to commercial is not an option I could agree with on that basis.
Yep.
I hope other councillors also feel that way. The fact that we have now got the water rate per cubic metre so that there isn't a subsidisation of one by the other is a fair outcome. A discount would not be a fair outcome.
Yep. So just to give some further information to that, the two plants, well, SPM receives the water and passes some of it on to OCD. Their volume per year is 860,000, so that's more than 8 times that upper limit of 100,000. So that's quite a significant discount if we went to that, which again seems to go against the whole fair play type stuff. So again, for Patricia or Jamie, so what we've got built in at the moment for those two plants, which is a 31% increase, does that doesn't factor in any differential on volume, does it?
No,
It doesn't. So if we just, so what they've been told they're getting, the 31% this year, is a flat rate that everybody's paying.
Correct.
There's no discounting. Yep.
Because it does actually put the rates up.
Yep.
If they were to get a discount, we've got to recover that funding from residentials,
Yep.
essentially.
Gotcha. Okay. And the other thing that came out this morning was that there's no other council in the country that's doing a high volume discount to an industry.
That's publicly that's got it in its fees and charges.
Yep.
There may be commercial arrangements
Yep.
that are outside fees and charges, but we've had a look
Yep.
and we can't find
Okay.
any public one.
So if we want the status quo, it's 1 up there in front of you?
I think, Jamie, we need 2 as the status quo because of the changes we've made with the capital program. It just drops their depreciation down in water. So 2 is the status quo. 1 we don't need anymore because of potential decisions above. 2 would be status quo and 3 would be if there was a volume discount applied to those 3 users that currently are over 100, or based on the modelling data, we're over 100,000.
So bear with me if I'm a bit thick on this one. Maybe it's the end of a long meeting. Can you explain to me again with 2 why we've got a 0.1% increase to rates? What are we offsetting there? If you said that the original 6.55 didn't have any increase in it.
So the 2.39 included us rating for the whole 200k for the water structure and also the LTP and NEMA. Because we've taken those out, that has reduced the number down to 235.
But is there a rates increase?
There's still a rates increase. This is technically moving it from the rates and putting it from the fees and charges onto the rates.
So it makes sure, it just changes the reallocation of the funding because we need a slightly smaller pool. It just changes the percentages going between what's collected by rates versus what's collected by fees and charges.
I've got some very
But
strange looking faces around the table.
It leaves the per cubic metre charge at 235 for both residential and commercial.
Yes.
From that point of view, it is a fair outcome for both commercial and residential, but the 0.10 combined rate impact, as you said, is merely a change in whether it's fees and charges or rates.
Or rates.
Yeah.
It becomes more complicated because we don't have water meters on our residential, so our residential is per connection.
Yeah.
So that's where the modelling doesn't seem like for like.
So is the counter argument then, if we didn't drop it from 239 to 235, we held it, we wouldn't have a rates impact?
You would actually be getting too much revenue.
You'd be in contravention then of the revenue and finance policy because you'd be overcharging.
So the policy says we have to do it that way? Very well.
I must admit, I don't have any certainty on what was just said, so bear.
Deputy Mayor and I agree that it's...
Oh, you two agree. Oh, well, that's the be all and end all. All right, so I'll put option 2 then, and have a quick show of hands on option 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a majority, thank you. And I guess, do you want to talk us through the sewerage fees, Patricia?
So again, this is the, because of potential decisions made about capital and about the level of depreciation funding, it has an impact on the fees and charges that we need to charge for those. So as a result of potential decisions above, it changes the fee and charge in order to get the recovery at the right level. So we can delete 1 if we go with 80%, and we can delete 2 and 3. result of having an 80% funded depreciation on sewerage, it drops the charge from 1.242 to 1.21 per cubic metre, and the tonnage rate as well for the tankard waste. And again, has a slight impact because we're switching again how we've recovered the need to cost to recover the total cost of that activity.
So bear with me again, because this is another area I'm struggling with. So the more we shift towards the rate increase, the more we're offsetting the actual user charges, the user pays. Is that what you're saying?
So this is the same as water.
Yeah.
So it's just the balance, because residential doesn't have the same recovery mechanism because it's done off a connection charge, versus if we're taking trade waste in, it's done based on a cubic metre and a tonne. So it's just as we move it round, because we take fees and charges out first to determine what the rates impact is, slightly less fees and charge to be reallocated into the base.
Okay, so you're recommending 2 or 1?
We're recommending 4.
4, okay.
Have to be 4.
Because these are all dependent on your depreciation recovery percentage that you're funding.
Did you have 4 built into 6.55?
Yes.
So there's no impact beyond what you originally put up in that? It doesn't increase 6.55 upwards? Option 4?
We already had it factored in when in your 6.55 had select this one.
Okay.
Because of the 80% depreciation,
Yep.
which was the existing.
Yep.
Unless we change the depreciation decision.
Yep.
4 was the one built in.
Yep. Okay. Any questions on that? All right, show of hands. All those in favour of 4? There's a majority. Thank you very much. Right, Jamie, the bad news. Where have we got to? On the assumption that the vote on the Great South
C&Ds
was no cutting, no cut to the funding. On the chairman's vote.
So with no reduction to Great South, the rates increase would be the combined rates increase would be 7.11.
That's a good one.
With a 5% reduction to Great South, it is 7%.
What was the first number you gave us? I'm sorry.
7.11.
7.11.
So my view on that, and I'll allow others to contribute as well, I think the issue of cutting Great South is, or not cutting it, is not worth 1.11, which is a very small amount of physical money at the end of the day in the overall scheme of things. So I'd be happy, unhappy but happy with 7.11. But I'm open to what others have to think about that. No, Darren's got to go shortly. He's saying that we need a break, but we can finalise this fairly quickly. Is there agreement around the table about the 7.11, or would you like to comment to that? Rangi.
Yeah, 7.11 is, you did right, the Great South thing is a close vote, but where we've ended up with is you know, compared to the 9.47, I think, and the work done today has been honest and it's achieved a lot.
Yep, thanks for that. Steve.
So I just had a question that I guess has been on my mind, that for me, hadn't been acknowledged throughout our process today. Just there was a lot of concern from ratepayers around stormwater, particularly those in
Yes.
lifestyle blocks, and so I just can't get it off my mind in terms of
Yep.
us running through this. So where,
Yep,
where
I can
is
help.
that at?
I can help you with that. So, two things: the general philosophy around, and Erin can jump in if she's not happy, around stormwater is for you to incur a cost of stormwater, you must be connected to, or your property must drain into a council-controlled stormwater ditch or system. Now, a lot of people out in these outlying areas that did give us submissions on that didn't. There were two that were very specific. You saw one that showed us flooding and actual sewage in one case, and Michael has arranged for those people to have direct visits from our people because they, regardless of the rating boundary, they have specific problems that need to be resolved. And if you go certainly to Otaran, it'll be no different at Morris Bush and other places as well. If council doesn't maintain those ditches now, given that they will rate for some of them, there will be some issues because some of those ditches are just clogged right to the hilt. So we'll wear some costs there. But I think the specific people that came in will have visits from Michael, from Erin's team to look at their specific problems, which are regardless, I think, of the rating boundary. They were more worried not about having to pay rates on that, because stormwater rates are not very high, or not significantly high. It's just the fact that what they've got at the moment is not working. Erin?
Yeah, I think it's just a really good conversation to have after the one we've just had about the allocation of cost for water, because it's really very much the same issue. It costs us so much money. There's this bucket of money for what it costs to run the stormwater network, and then it's figuring out how we're going to divide that cost up. Now, approximately two-thirds to three-quarters of the cost goes into the general rate, and that's borne by every ratepayer across the city.
That's 25%. We'll just drop that down.
Sorry, drop that down a bit. And then the rest, sorry, I've gone the wrong way. And then the rest is borne by those with the direct connections to the network. And so that's all that we're looking at, is making sure that we're clear on who has a direct connection and who is simply getting a portion as part of their general rate.
Awesome, appreciate that update.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Grant. I'll come back to you, Patricia. Grant?
Yeah, so just on that and following on from Steve, so what I take from what you've said is we put our proposal that, hey, you could be effective, and some of those ones that submitted, like the bloke at Anderson's Park, he's probably not likely to be effective based on what you've said around doesn't connect directly into a town.
We're working through anybody who believes that for some unusual reason the topography has been changed and so therefore the LiDAR data that shows where water would run is incorrect. We're working with on a one-on-one basis.
So a good example is the person at the front of my driveway goes into the ditch. I don't, but my son has now piped off his section to get rid of Paralect floodwater into the ditch. He'll have to pay because he's connected. He's put the pipe in to the ditch, but he's still connected, so he can expect to pay. I'm not connected, so don't need to pay.
And I would just note it's not just that you've taken a pipe from your gutters out. It's also the fact that your water will pool on your land and then it has to flow. Your overland flow has to go somewhere as well.
Yep. And so I've told the people at Otatar exactly that. Yep. Tom?
Could I just ask Patricia whether that number she gave us, 7.11, includes the sewage, the additional rate 0.3 for sewage? Because in the little count I was doing, I get 7.41 rather than 7.11.
Yes, it does.
She said.
That's the fees and charges.
But if we're actually, if we're actually going to approve a number, could I just ask for a recount, Patricia? But, I mean, I might be completely wrong, but I mean, I was doing the pluses and minuses as we were going.
Yeah, no, it's 0.31. Yeah, we've got that.
7.11?
7.11.
Okay.
Yep.
That's good.
All right, Alex.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank everybody for participating in the debate this afternoon. Like, it's been an interesting consultation period. I think it was helpful that you sent through the list of where all the other councils proposed rates increases. At 7.11, we would be ranking 47th out of the 60 councils that you put forward. So for that still means that at 7.11, we're still firmly in the lower third of proposed increases, right in between Southland District and Kapiti.
Yep. Kapiti's very similar to us in lots of ways. Patricia.
I was actually going to get Rhiannon.
Oh,
to go through
Rhiannon,
the
sorry.
process for the stormwater, because we've still got to deal with that, the feedback from that.
Yeah, so it's just to note that at the hearings, you delegated to Finance and Policy to deal with the rating policy for stormwater. It has no rates impact. There is no additional rates money being raised by that proposed policy change. It is simply who pays. So it's not the same as fees. It doesn't impact other rates. So that's why it doesn't need to be discussed now, because it has no rates impact.
Okay.
And that will be going to an extraordinary
10th of June.
finance and
In
policy
Yep.
in early June.
Is it?
Great.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And that takes my question off the table, because Erin and Rhiannon have answered what I was going to just point out. Erin's confirmed that we're working one-to-one with any ratepayer who's raised the issues, and Rhiannon's talked about what's coming to finance and policy and the rates impact issues, so don't need to raise those.
Ringy.
Look, just checking on behalf of Mr. Hewitson from the poultry farm, is his stormwater issue related to this, or is that another issue tied up with the RMA and the granting of that consent? Is that a separate thing he's faced with?
He's talking about stormwater issues, this is about a rating process, isn't it?
Okay, so it's not the problem of him, it's not, this is a separate issue.
All right. That's it done. Oh.
Motions.
Thank you, Leslie. 7.1, and always Darren as a backup. 7.11. Yes? All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Bloody hell, unanimous. Excellent.
Are we not
Did
going
you want to
back?
give people the opportunity to vote against certain?
Yeah.
We have to go back through each one.
You said we did
You
straw
only did
votes.
straw polls.
Really?
Yes. It shouldn't take long, Mayor Clark. It won't take long, Mayor Clark.
On with me,
It's a lot of
Clark.
scrolling, just FYI.
We come back next week.
There were only straw polls, and you did declare they were only straw polls, Mayor Clark.
Only where I
Those straw
thought there was
polls
going to be
never
difficult.
work out.
That's all right. We'll work our way through.
It's like the electoral worm polls.
The
They never work out
difficulty's
either.
sitting right to the right of me. Right. Come on. Right. So let's work our way through.
Hold on, I'll check the documents are right.
Yep.
We're going to do
go
that
through
tomorrow.
this now, we're going to make sure we do
So
it
Leslie
right.
and Darren, 1 to 5.
Noting that the numbers will be updated with Patricia and Jamie's advice.
Yep.
Because they're out of date now.
Yep. All right, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. On number 6, where did we get?
No, number 6 we did. Number 6 is just noting.
Oh, number 6 is noting, so don't even worry about that.
Seconded.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Number 7, the same again.
Moved.
Jeez, I can't even see what we're voting on.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Number 8.
So this has got the wording that Councillor Soper has provided, but I haven't
Yep.
managed to get it into that resolution yet.
Yep.
So this is where basically anyone who wants to vote for the, what was it, the retaining of the facility so long until a new site can be located.
Yep.
And noting that.
Yep.
That's not, it hasn't been, I haven't put the wording in yet, we moved on before I could get that typed in.
But that was A.
Stop looking
That
at
was
the
A.
screen, Stephen.
So do you want, do you,
Yeah,
Point A.
8A was what was the, was the motion, so it's
Yep.
capturing those who want to vote against that and have their votes recorded. So
Yep.
those who want to retain Wapna Place as it is, or to,
Move.
or to do,
To move.
to
So,
basically who wants
so
to retain it.
A implies that we are moving.
Yeah.
We need to find an alternative solution, and for the management that are present, we need to be mindful of Wapna Place upgrade that's currently in transition, that we can't leave that decision for too long, and you'll probably need to explore what happens if we maintain those toilets till the end of August. Will that sit all right with the development of Walker Place? And then that may be a crunch point. Now, logic would tell me that if we need to close out a month earlier so that Jeff can do what he needs to do to upgrade the front end of Walker Place, then we don't have any additional costs because we're going to pay them anyway, either way, the current contractors. So,
Would it help if I read out the amendment to A, or is everybody clear on it?
It would be good.
no, Michael's been writing it down.
So I've got it captured.
Yeah, great.
I think everyone, it's just basically we just need a so obviously councillor Soper, you will move
Yep.
this.
Yep.
We just need a seconder for that.
Darren seconded that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried.
And it was making sure that anyone who wanted to have
Oh,
their
sorry.
vote recorded against that.
Was there anybody opposed to the
So we're
Walker
doing
Place
A, huh?
outcome, which is that we move away?
What?
What?
So sorry, because everyone's
much
talking at
confusion.
once. Where are we up to, sorry? A?
So councillors, this is motion 8,
A.
which is
8A.
moving the closing Wagner Place as it is, but after 30 August, and we've worked on finding an alternate location,
Sure.
ideally ICL, with the bike shed. This was moved by councillor Soper. We haven't captured it on the resolutions on the screen yet because we were moving. So that was the motion that's just been put. It's anyone who doesn't agree with that, please speak now because we can then record your vote for this, for prosperity.
Unanimous. So,
Everyone's in support.
so Michael, that
Thank you.
that resolution needs to include alternative spaces,
Yes,
not just
yes,
the
it
bike
does.
shed, because
Yes, it does.
Alex raised the issue about splash palace, about
Black
gyms
Palace
and
and
other places.
YMCA, yes,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
that's absolutely in there. Thank you, Mayor Clark.
It's in there. Captured.
So,
I just need to note one minor correction on 9 before you vote on that.
surely not.
Just to note that youth under card payment and under cash needs to be corrected 13 to 18 in both of those.
Oh, 13 to 18, yep, I'm with you. God, could have left a loophole open there.
Yes, yeah.
All the 13-year-olds could have been cruising. All day on a city council bus. I'm really excited. Unsupervised, yeah. All right. So we got that one done, didn't we? Oh, number 9.
So number 9, we need
All
to move
those
it
in
to second.
favour? Carried.
Done, thank you.
Agreed.
I move number 10.
Yep, thank you, Darren. All those in favour of the regional public transport plan?
Aye.
Carried. The urban play 1 and 11, we went to option
3.
3.
Option
I
3.
move.
Division.
I
All
move.
right, Barry and Trish. Yeah. All those in favour?
Aye.
I'd like to call a
Carried.
division, please, Chair.
Certainly, yep. Okay, yep, okay. So, we've got option 3 on the table. Show of hands for those that are in favour of
Option 3.
not proceeding
Option
at this
3.
stage. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a majority.
Like my vote recorded against, please.
Yep,
It's automatically recorded as a
It's a
division.
yep, division's already recorded. We've already agreed, but we'll do it
Move
again.
number 12.
Yep,
Agree to
thank you,
adopt
Darren.
the play strategy.
Yep, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Right, down to the Community Wellbeing Fund, with the rewording around the pause.
Move
Oh,
14,
13,
3.
okay.
Nothing, but
Well, it's just a note. Well, do we need a mover and seconder?
it's a resolution to note it.
Yep,
Move
Leslie
14, 3.
and Darren, thank you. Moving 13, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Number 14, confirms the impact for the Community Wellbeing Fund.
I'll move.
Trish, second, which one are we putting?
So this is
3.
3, A3.
Yep. Yep, all those in favour with 3.
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Yes, want it recorded?
Yes, please.
Yep, Rangi and Rhea opposed. Built Heritage Fund,
Killed Christmas. So you told us. I don't know if it was real.
1 year pause on the 200,000, a mover and a seconder.
I'll move.
Won't ask you to do that, Leslie. Tom moving.
Yep.
Seconder, Grant. All those in favour of option 1?
Aye.
I'd like
Aye.
a division, please.
A division again, certainly. Hands shown for all those in favour of B1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 again. Excellent. Carried.
Record, please.
Recorded.
Yeah.
Yep.
So can you just put your hands up?
For those, Leslie,
Park can
yeah.
vote.
Yeah, Leslie, Rangi, Alex and Darren opposed. Sister City program.
And I do too.
It's full council, Pania.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yep. So,
What was the next one, sorry?
we had option 4 on the table there with a reduced amount from 25,000 down to 10,000.
It's option 3.
Yep. Mover and a seconder,
Seconded.
Darren and Leslie, thank you.
It's 10 grand.
All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Rangi's opposed, thank you. Great South, we had a split vote that way, I think, from memory, but we'll put it again with the division, so we're clear on that. Which was to retain the funding,
Aye.
which is option 2.
Call
isn't
for a
it?
division.
So all those in favour of option 2, right, raise your hand, which is to retain the funding. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Shit, how did I get it? What happened to my casting vote?
It was the next one. It was a stadium.
It's the stadium.
It was a stadium, which was your casting vote.
Oh, the stadium was one, all right. Okay, moving on to E, which is similar sort of thing, stadium funding. To retain, which is number 3, the
Aye.
stadium funding.
Aye.
Trish and Grant, all those in favour?
Aye.
Carried, so there's no reduction to the funding there. Agrees and disagrees to 15A, B and C, which is what
Move to
Patricia spoke to.
agree.
You move all
All
3,
three.
yeah. Grant's got seconder there. All those in favour of agreeing to A, B and C?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Didn't we do something to close it?
No? All right, on the issue of D, where do we land?
That's right, yes.
On 80%. Okay, somebody move that?
Yes.
Yeah, and I'll second that. All those in favour of the 80% figure in D?
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
Me, and I'd like
Yeah,
to
hang on, we've
record
got a few,
opposition,
got a few
please.
opposed, so Ria, Alex and Leslie, all recorded. Now on 16, we've got A and B, so where do we end up with A, which is the commercial water fees?
So A is ended up at 2.
Move
Two.
16A2.
Yep, okay, a mover and a seconder.
Move.
Leslie, Darren, good to be on your phone, yep, seconded. All those in favour of 2?
Aye.
Carried. Oh, sorry, anybody opposed?
16A2.
Alan's opposed, yep. You with me on that one, Mike? Yep. And on commercial sewerage fees,
I'll move option 4, option B4.
yep,
I'll second that.
seconded by Darren. All those in favour?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? No, carried. And
I'll
we've
move
got
C
and
and
D
D.
and 17. Oh no, the notes the vacancies there.
16C and D, I'll
Yep.
move.
And Darren seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Carried.
And number 17
As a result.
will be, notice the rates increase will be.
To be tabled, which will be 7.11%.
14.04 for water and.
No, I don't want to know about water.
Well,
Se-
we actually need to have it noted
Oh,
because
right.
it does impact how the rates will get done in the rate strike.
Absolutely.
Doesn't matter. The people want to know what the overall figure is.
And it was,
Except-
it matters, Mr Mayor.
Except for us people that owe to Tara that don't have to pay.
What? Sorry?
Water is 14.04.
Yeah.
And non-water is 3.46.
There we go.
It'll look pretty eventually.
A mover and a seconder? Yep. Thank you. Too late, Grant. All those in favour?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you very much for your time today.
Well done.
Move out of